24th select board meeting to order, but first we will be doing a county commissioners meeting. I'll go through the script and then turn the meeting over to Christy Garantella. We are using Zoom webinar for our meetings, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to each meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for each meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click their raise the hand button if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order in which they were raised at the appropriate time in the meeting. As a preliminary matter, permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me, and the other people that are anticipated on the agenda. Starting with select board members in the order in which I see you. Jason Bridges.
Present.
Christy Garantella.
Here.
Melissa Murphy.
Here.
I don't see Matt Fee on yet. Next, I will go through town staff members that are with us tonight. Jericho Mealy.
Present.
David Gray.
Here.
Brian Turbot.
Present.
Ken Bogrand.
Present.
Libby Gibson.
Present.
Vincent Murphy.
Present.
Amy Baxter.
Here.
Andrew Vorse.
Here.
Rob McNeil.
Present.
Holly Backus.
Present.
Tucker Holland.
Here.
Erica Mooney.
Present.
We have John Giorgio with us this evening from Town Council.
Here.
And Vicky Marsh, also from Town Council.
Here.
And Drew Patnode is with us as well.
Yep.
This open meeting of the Select Board and of the County Commissioners is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the Governor's order suspends the requirements of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations. Ensuring access does not ensure public participation. However, we do ensure public participation through the Zoom webinar functions outlined previously. Please note that this meeting is being recorded as all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks will be able to see you, and take care not to share the screen of your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that are provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda materials unless the chair notes otherwise. The chairs will introduce each speaker on the agenda after they conclude their remarks. Raise hands for questions or comments. Please remember to mute your phone and your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. If you wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And finally, every vote this evening will be taken by a roll call. With that, I will turn it over to Christy Garantella to chair the County Commissioners meeting.
Can you hear me now? Okay, so I will call to order the March 24th County Commissioners meeting. And the first announcement is the County Commissioners meeting is being audio and video recorded. I will now go to public comment. If there is a public comment, please raise your hand. This is for any items not on the County Commissioners agenda. I do see a raised hand, Erica, from Justin Quinn.
Hello.
Hi, Justin.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I can't see myself, but can you hear me?
Yes, you have a public comment for the county commissioners?
I do. I am a soccer parent with an athlete at the Nobody or Turf Field. And I'm also on the director of the Nantucket Youth Soccer. And one of the issues we have for this spring is that because of the COVID protocols, the teams coming over on the boat to Nantucket aren't allowed to ride share to the field. So we need a bus system to get the team and the parents to the field and then back. This year we have 5 teams with 40 games total, 20 games on Nantucket and 20 games off island. And what I've also learned through this predicament that all the other club teams, sports that we have right now, let's say lacrosse has 200 athletes. It seems we really need a public system to move these athletes around after school to the fields and then maybe bring them back to Mid-Island somehow.
So I think this might be something for the select board agenda. Libby, do you want to pause this until we transfer over?
I'm sorry, I thought I was in the wrong group.
I mean, I think it's generally related to NRTA. So I think we can take Justin's comments in and go from there. I don't know that you need to repeat it all during select board.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. This is something that we'll take into consideration and possibly have as a future agenda item with the NRTA.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any other hands for public comment, and there's no new business. Moving on to approval of minutes and warrants. The approval of minutes from February 17th, 2015. I'm sorry, 2000. I don't even know what the year it is.
Motion to approve.
Second.
By roll call vote, Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella, aye. That passes unanimously. And approval of payroll and treasury warrants for March 2021.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella, aye. That passes unanimously. Moving on to official business, a request for approval and execution of temporary easement agreement with Nantucket Conservation Foundation. And I'm going to pass this over to Vicky. And Ken.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that by way of background, the Commission is aware that a portion of Sheep Pond Road eroded in the last major storm. And so there was a major issue in terms of providing access to a significant number of houses on the upper portion of Sheep Pond Road, which were now not able to be accessed. What happened was that then the DPW and town administration met with the residents of Head of Plains Road, with many of the residents of the entire Sheep Pond area and the Conservation Foundation in order to come up with a temporary solution to address access, because the only way a number of these people were able to get access and egress was in fact by going over neighbors' properties. We have, after a significant amount of negotiation with the neighbors and their council, and an incredible amount of input from our town council, Vicky Marsh, we have come up with an agreement of a temporary easement that has in fact been agreed to by all the parties mentioned and their council. And so it is being presented to you today. It's been drafted by town council, reviewed and agreed by council for the other people. And what we're asking for you to do is to approve and then execute the document, which in fact has already been executed by the 5 major parties involved. once this has been accomplished, Vicky then will need to be able to make a presentation to the Conservation Commission and National Heritage in terms of to get their approval for emergency agreement to this access in order to be able, because there are certain natural environment issues involved. So again, put it in its simplest form. It's been a very complicated process. What the next step will be for the town, working with a representative of the neighbors and the Conservation Commission to come up with a long-term solution with respect to access. I would just be sort of sad to not have indicated that a major portion of this access is as a result of two of the neighbors allowing the town to be able to use their driveway, go over their driveway in order to be able to get the shortest distance and the quickest amount of access to the property. So it is my recommendation that the motion be made to approve the easement and also then to authorize the execution by the county commissioners. And I know Vicky is here to answer any questions that you may have with respect to the nature of the agreement or any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and thank you for working so quickly on this. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Make a motion to approve as Ken outlined.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella, aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Vicky and Ken.
Christy, can I
Yes.
make a quick comment?
Mhm.
Yeah, I was hoping someone else would comment earlier, so I was waiting. I think this is a lot more complicated than people think. You know, there was a lawsuit previously, and we're sort of following that with this. The idea that, you know, that you can take these things and just better them, which everyone seems to, in the public seems to think, is not necessarily true, as this shows us. And I think, you know, when we're talking about coastal resiliency and how are we going to handle sort of expunging roads or moving roads and what our responsibilities are, this is setting, you know, precedent and is, you know, A, it's difficult, and B, it's the state hasn't caught up with what's going to happen. And so I think people need to, you know, I would suggest people read it and make sure they understand, you know, that this is, you know, what we face here and in other parts of the island.
Vicky?
Hi, Matt. Good evening, everybody. I just also want to add to the discussion that we were able to get, you know, after a lot of negotiations, we were able to get all of these property owners who are affected directly to agree to allow the residents of Sheep Pond Road to travel over their driveways, some of their private property. And also we have two property owners who are allowing for actual construction on their property. And they have agreed to grant this temporary access and construction easements for a period of 12 months and additional 2 months if needed by the county in order to be able to complete a permanent access project. In addition to the 14 months that is allotted by the agreement, we also have the right, if necessary, to go back and just extend this agreement in order that we can complete the project. So it's not going to stop in midstream. And this will enable the county to address a permanent solution rather than just this temporary easement.
Thank you, Vicky.
Yeah, Chris and Chris, yeah, my comment, Vicky, was not to, you know, not to disparage the property owners at all. They were great, and it's amazing. My point is more pointed to the public, who seems to think that it's very easy. I mean, we had to negotiate. You guys had to work hard, and they're still holding our feet to the fire, giving us X amount of time to solve it, and they can oppose this. Any individual can oppose this. So when we're talking about other areas, it isn't as simple as it is sometimes portrayed. That, oh no, the town just takes it, and you know, the town, we have to do a lot of work, and it's very difficult. And I just For the record, I want people to know that. That's all.
Thank you, Matt. Vicky?
Matt, I agree with you. And, you know, I too think that it's important that everyone understand how difficult it is to get these projects to go forward. Not only do we have to get agreement from these property owners, but we also have to go to the state and get approvals for mitigation or special permits to be able to do this project, because it's going to be going over conservation land. So these projects are not able to be done simply or necessarily very quickly. And I do commend the parties that have been involved, and I hope that the public understands just how complicated some of these projects can be.
Thank you, Vicky. And thank you, Matt, for bringing up those additional points. Moving on to the next agenda item, commissioners' reports and comments, review, amend county commissioner agenda and public comment protocol. So this agenda item is very similar to what we just did at the select board level, reviewing our public comment. Are there any questions or comments?
Move approval.
Second.
By roll call vote, Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella, aye. That passes unanimously. And the last item is adjournment. Is there a
Motion to adjourn, county?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Don Holgate,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella, aye. That passes unanimously. Over to you, Don.
Thanks, Christy. So let's go through announcements. We've already covered the meetings being video and audio recorded. And Libby, did you want to make the rest of the announcements, or
Sure.
point them to the people who are going to?
Yes, I will have to point them to some others. All right, so first off, we've already said the meetings being video and audio recorded. Vince Murphy, I believe our coastal resilience coordinator, is going to give the announcement from the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee on some tools being used for the public regarding coastal flooding, erosion, and sea level rise. Vince?
Thank you very much, Libby, and thank you very much to Madam Chair as well. Is it okay for me to share my screen very briefly?
Sure.
So there are some new education and outreach parts of the Coastal Resilience Plan that have just come online. What I'm showing here is one of them. It's a presentation. It follows a pretty simplistic format called meeting in a box. So this is the kind of meeting anyone can take, go to a group of people and be able to just give very somewhat basic, but also some detailed information on the Coastal Resilience Plan, the processes within it, how to give feedback, understanding basic elements of sea level rise and how sea level rise will affect Nantucket. And the basic format of it is a nice title card, 3 slides that are for the presenter to be able to understand how to give the information out, and then it continues through about 25 odd slides of the presentation, and the last handful of slides are question slides with links so that you can give feedback to Arcadis, who can then use that for the Coastal Resilience Plan. So this is also supported by a frequently asked questions document. I'm going to stop sharing for now. That is about 5 pages long, gives extra background information for people's questions that can come up quite regularly, and then that person will be able to respond. The third part of it are storytelling cards. The storytelling cards are 2 parts. The first part is my Nantucket is, and then there's a prompt at the bottom to talk about how you see the development of the Coastal Resilience Plan. Then the second card is in the future my Nantucket will be. What would you like to get from the Coastal Resilience Plan as it develops? So all of this is available on the town's website on the Coastal Resilience Plan page under a section called Get Involved. There are effectively these three things are present on it, but presented in two different ways. It's available in both English and in Spanish. So we're trying to serve as much of the community as possible. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Vince. Next, the Director of Planning, Andrew Vorse, is going to give us an update on an upcoming building analysis that the Planning Commission and or board, I forget which, Andrew, has authorized. And this is a bit in response to, we added this to the agenda as an announcement, kind of in response to some inquiries that the board has received about a build out analysis. So we asked Andrew to come on and explain what's going to be happening.
Thank you, Libby, and thank you, board members. So in your packet is the scope of an upcoming build-out analysis that we have. The Planning and Economic Development Commission has entered into a contract with Weston and Sampson. If you've reviewed that, you see that there's some areas of the island that they've already basically calculated the build-out in connection with the sewer project. And the areas sort of not included in that are the next phase that the Weston and Sampson will do. So basically it'll be the same criteria done island-wide. And as mentioned in the report, it's the third build-out analysis that's been done. There was one in 1997, and then there was an interim one done by the state. And the last effort was by the Worcester Polytech group, which was very well done. But I think with Weston and Sampson, you know, we'll drill down to the last areas. So that contract is being funded with the NP and EDC's direct money from the state for the first phase. The second phase is funded through town, through the town budget process. So we appreciate that and thank you. Hopefully that will all pass through town meeting. And if there's any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Andrew. Is Tucker doing the next
I
announcement?
see Melissa with her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa.
That's okay. Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, Don. Through you, Don, Andrew, you know, I think that one of the requests we hear a lot, or the popular phrase on social media, is a carrying capacity. And I'm not sure exactly what a carrying capacity is, but is this a build out analysis giving us a sense of, my understanding is a sense of how much available land there is to build out on? Would you say that is there such a thing as a carrying capacity? And is this similar to it?
Okay, well, I can tell you that the build out analysis looks at vacant land that can be subdivided, and comes up with a number. So it's a math exercise based on current projections. So once that number is, it's basically creating the facts. Where we go from there is a further discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, a carrying capacity is a concept that, has some roots back in the late 1700s. Its application is, its basic assumption is that there is only so many of X or Y that can be handled, and it's typically done on finite things. It was used for cattle boats, how many cattle could come in the boat in the the finite space. Applied to humans and human development, it's quite a bit of stretch, and it's really not something that's really not in standard planning practice. So it's more applicable for the animal world, wild animals, and very finite spaces. So not the same. I think the build out analysis is really kind of the backbone of most planning exercises. So
Wonderful. Thank you for that explanation. I think that may help myself and others in the community understand, and I appreciate this exercise. So thank you to NP and EDC for taking us on, or planning, whoever did it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Tucker Holland, our housing director, is going to give a little announcement about an upcoming webinar in connection with the housing production plan survey.
Thank you very much, Libby and Madam Chair. Yes, we just wanted to remind the community that next Tuesday, March 30th at 4:30, there will be a webinar, the second for the housing production plan update. Survey results from the 1,300 surveys that were filled out, plus the focus group interviews and additional correspondence and feedback we've received will be shared by our HPP consultants, Jen Goldson and Judy Barrett. The trust will be present as well as myself to answer questions, and maybe of greatest interest to the community, the 10 recommended strategies that are intended to be included in the housing production plan will also be reviewed, and we are very interested in the community's feedback. So you do need to register to attend the webinar, is my understanding, and the link to do so is on the Affordable Housing Trust page of the town website. It's just a simple click and a quick registration. So we hope you'll join us next Tuesday at 4:30 and register in advance. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tucker. Thank you very much, Tucker. There is no select board meeting next week, March 31st, back at it on Wednesday, April 7th. And Holly Backus, our preservation planner, has an announcement that didn't make it onto the agenda because we only found out about it last Friday. It's very exciting. Holly?
Thank you, Libby. So I am here tonight to give you an announcement that as of last Friday, the town of Nantucket has been accepted into the National Park Service's Certified Local Government Program in the Federal Preservation Program. So this is an excellent move for the Nantucket Historic District Commission, as well as the Historical Commission. We can jointly meet as a Nantucket CLG. And we join 26 other communities within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So thank you, Select Board, for your effort in this. We appreciate your assistance. Thank you.
Thank you for all your work on putting it together, Holly. Next, I'm going to turn to the COVID-19 weekly update. Are there any opening public or board comments? Seeing no hands, I will move on to a report from the Human Services Director, Jericho.
Hello. I am filling in for Roberto as well to do the general COVID report. So we'll start with enforcement very quickly. I think everyone who can look outside can see that we're not having great mask compliances. So we're going to try and tighten that up a little bit. We are still up to about 424 field inspections, 374 job site visits. Our non-compliance percentage, that is the number of times that someone has not been in full compliance, is 12%. That is an increase of 3%. So we're having difficulty keeping up and keeping people on the same page as far as masks and other job site and general area places. Please remember that vaccination does not change the mask order. Masks are still required in public places. They're still required in offices. They're still required in job sites everywhere else. Next, the general, I'm not going to try and duplicate the biostatistics that Roberto does. So I'm just going to give you kind of a generalized concerns, issues, and potential problems with respect to COVID. We have the most recent viral load tests back from the town sewage system. They are suggesting a 15 per day, 15 new cases per day level. We have roughly the same level of concentration we did the last one, but we have significantly more people on the island, which means that there's more COVID in the system, which means there are more people who are positive. Strong possibility right now that there is an underreport of testing, as volumes for both of the asymptomatic and symptomatic porticos have been low. As a result, there's probably more COVID than the base numbers from the hospital that we reported right now. I think fewer people are going to get tests. And as a result, there's probably a higher level of COVID than the the last 7-day average would indicate. There has been at least one confirmed case on the Cape, not on Nantucket, but there has been one confirmed case of the Brazilian variant on the Cape. That is one of the E484K carrying variants, which means that there have been examples of it breaking through to previously immunized people, and it's one of the ones that may be a threat against even the vaccinated. So please be extremely careful, especially if you're traveling off island. We have not set up testing to determine whether or not we have the variants on the island yet, but it is a very safe bet that given the most recent travel sequence, that there are both the more virulent, that is the quicker spreading variant on the island, and it is almost certain that we have one of the E484K variants, either the Brazilian or the South American. Travel levels are high. This is the second week after spring vacation, which means that we should be hitting the highest level of travel travel infections. However, we are seeing signs of community spread. It is very important that we do not have community spread leading into the summer. One of the major differences between last summer and this summer is the beginning of last summer, there was very little COVID on the island. If we move into a summer season with COVID being a problem, we will have community spread all through the summer. So we need to be very careful about getting that locked down. So if we were doing the old Department of Homeland Security, color-coded threat on COVID right now, it would be in a yellow. I personally believe this is probably the most dangerous and the most high threat point we've been in since Christmas. We have similar levels of of viral loads in the sewage as we did during Thanksgiving. So please be very careful. Do not take your masks off, even if you're vaccinated. There is still a definite chance that we have a spike, at least one more spike before the summer. So please be careful on that. With respect to vaccine news, our last several allocations from the state have been very lockstep. We have a very solid amount of vaccine coming to the island. The clinic is expanding its operations. They should be adding additional scheduling times in the coming weeks, and they're moving to a higher throughput model for a number of different vaccination systems. One of the things that's going to start becoming a problem is the second doses. So remember, about half of all appointments in a given week are going to be last month's first doses receiving their second shot. So there are going to be, this is going to be a constant problem until we're able to order the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is single shot application. But we are not able to do that as yet. It is not even requestable. At this point, it's all been earmarked for specific areas. So we're largely going to be getting Pfizer and Moderna as before. As always, the scheduling tool at the hospital website will be open at 10 a.m. on Saturday for the next week's appointments. Seasonal workers who are coming to the island, if they have not been vaccinated in their point of origin, they are eligible for vaccine if they are working in Massachusetts. Anyone who comes to Massachusetts is eligible for anyone who comes to Massachusetts and works here is eligible for vaccination here, as well as all residents and property owners. Things you can do to make the hospital and the town's job easier when it comes to scheduling your vaccine shots. Do not change your appointment. Please don't cancel your appointment. Please don't try and move your second appointment. These are very tightly run scheduling systems that are extremely difficult to alter. So don't travel if you're half vaccinated. Don't get a vaccine somewhere else and come here trying to get your second one. Don't cancel or shuffle around your next appointment if at all possible. I believe that's basically it for me. I'm happy for any questions with respect to any of this.
Any questions from Christy, then Jason?
Thank you. Just more of a comment. I know that a lot of teachers are getting vaccinated, and I was told, and if you could confirm this, that if you are tested, then you can't get the. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, sorry, I had a little hiccup there. I'm assuming that this is the if they're tests, if you have a positive test and that interaction with the vaccine scheduling.
No, even if you're negative, are you still able to get the vaccine?
It's a relatively, there are some complexity to it, some complexities to it, but basically if you have a negative test, in most situations, you are allowed to get the vaccine. That you should get tested. You should not allow your vaccination status to impact your willingness to get tested. However, that is a bad thing.
Yeah, and my comment was just more so for our community to stay vigilant, because we don't want people to have to postpone getting their vaccine because they've had an exposure. So this is really the time to kind of feel like it's last March and hunker down.
Very much so.
Jason?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jericho, I think Roberto said weeks ago that the sewer test, the BioBot test, we might be able to detect variants. Is that coming down the road? Are there other ways to detect it that we'll have access to?
Detecting the variants is a fairly intensive process in terms of distinguishing them from the baseline. I guess we're calling it the heirloom COVID at this point. I know that they are still working on that. I'm not entirely sure when it's going to be deployed. I know that we'll be using it as soon as it's available.
Madam Chair, I think David Gray, this just came in quite recently, may have a quick update about the variant testing. We are trying to get that going. David, real quick.
All right, thank you, everyone. Yes, I was contacted by BioBot last week that they are starting the COVID variant testing effective this week, and it is no extra fee for the Nantucket. So we did sample this week, and the variant results will be coming in a day or two after the normal results that we get. So we have started the program. I have yet to know what the results are going to be. As Jericho said, it's very new, but we are on the list and we started this week.
That's excellent news.
Are there any other questions? I don't believe there's an economic task force update today. Is that correct? Okay. So we'll go to the report from the licensing administrator on outdoor dining. Amy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to, in a second here, share my screen. I'm going to go over and review the plan for private property and public property as it stands now, so that we can go over any discussion points or feedback from the board and be prepared. Our plan is to be prepared for a public hearing and vote on April the 7th, your next meeting. So I think we're close to that. I'm going to share my screen. I will, nothing hugely new, but go through each point, and then when I'm done, we can kind of go over our discussion points. So let me go here. Wish me luck I do this right. And here we go. Okay, great. Okay. Great. So this is in line with we've been discussing with the Nantucket Economic Recovery Task Force. I'm going to start with some considerations, basically what we're going to be asking you to discuss and consider as we have this discussion. So the things that we will need to be doing is review and approval of first group will be private property outdoor expansions per emergency order number 50 from Governor Baker, which expands on emergency order 35, allowing for expansion of outdoor space for liquor licensed premises by the local licensing authority without further state approval. So that order gives you the ability to extend this year. That was originally just done until November of last year. That extends it until the end of the state of emergency plus 60 days or earlier if the board chooses to do so. Secondly, we will review and approve in a public hearing public property outdoor expansion plan. That includes any road closures, sidewalk dining, or anything on public property. A few things we'll discuss is the timeline for these closures per the board. I have some recommendations which we will discuss as well. As far as sidewalk dining allowed following inspection of setup to begin no earlier than perhaps week of April 12th, weather permitting, and we'll discuss this further. Also a recommendation of street closures to allow to begin no earlier than week of April 18th or later, weather permitting, with inspections to begin after those barriers are installed. Again, we will touch on this as well. I also want to discuss establishing conditions for outdoor spaces to include curfews, live music, or any sort of conditions as well. We have current curfew we established in 2020 calling for a closure of all licensed premises at 12 midnight. We can discuss that, and then also how we want to handle recommended outdoor spaces, how they can be allowed to have either light background music, which we allowed until 10 p.m., and if they can be allowed to have perhaps one-day permits to have live music requests based on whatever performance guidelines are at the time. So that's just a review of the things we'll need to discuss and vote on for the board. I'll review kind of where we stand now. We have private property requests. Emergency Order 50 allows you to just, if you wanted to approve all properties at once, or with specific conditions. I'd rather we go through and do everything specifically because of all of our special conditions. Anyone out there, if you don't see yours in here, this was where it was when I did this presentation. So there might be a few others that we add. We will go through. We have applications for all these folks. Most of these are pretty much the same as last year. It gives you kind of what any changes, if any, from 2020, if they have current license space and what the application asks for. So currently we have these two sheets of folks, which again, I think every single one is very similar to last year with some additional tables. And we will be adding a few of those before the final vote. Again, we're going to be voting and doing this as a single season, non-precedent setting vote. With private property extensions, they must have the legal right to occupy the extension. Everything I have listed here so far has approval, so we'll just need to see landlord approval. I provided here just a sample motion and things that we need to vote on. Private spaces, once voted on, will be effective immediately. Again, those spaces will still be at that point subject to inspection and alteration by town departments, should there be any reason to, because of codes or safety regulations. Move on, quick review, street and sidewalk dining. Basic conditions as we consider these things. One thing, when they're set up, they must follow all, as we call them, sector-specific protocols from the state for food service, social distancing, if there's entertainment, whatever those conditions are at the time, they need to be followed. What we've set up, and thank you to Florencia, that is setting up QR codes that we will provide to all businesses to have on signage and things, since it changes so much, is the easiest way to do that, where people will be able to scan for complete up-to-date information on where we are at whatever moment in time. So that will be helpful as we move through changing. ADA requirements are things we have to consider, and I think are going to be much more closely followed and measured and followed up on this year. Obviously, it was very quick last year, and a lot of comments were about sidewalk clearance for pedestrians, and that's going to be a goal with these sidewalk spaces. Again, I've listed here the different feet requirements on sidewalks like Main Street or lesser traveled sidewalks, and the requirements for non-accessible surfaces as far as providing access to other surfaces for diners. And again, there are more restrictions there, but I wanted to give you that idea. Patio guidelines from the ABCC must be followed as they would in non-COVID times. That's going to require some fencing or roping, rather, of some of these spaces so that they are separated from public walkways. And that the areas are contiguous to licensed premises with a clear view or with a staff member that is in charge of that area. Again, those will be more closely followed this year and may result in fewer tables in some areas. Another important point, occupancy. With all these establishments, as we've talked many times, that these outdoor spaces are not meant to increase their occupancy. Their occupancy pre-COVID is what the occupancy is today. because of spacing. They obviously need more space to get to that occupancy, so they will be held to their current maximum occupancy on their COI unless it is less because of health or other restrictions. So that current approved occupancy must not be exceeded with these spaces. And then finally, we are providing more extensive street and sidewalk licensing agreement to include required insurance coverage. More information on maintenance of public spaces. It's important for folks to know when a street is closed, that street is not maintained by DPW or the town. Now that if your diners are on that and closed for your restaurant, that is required to be cleaned and maintained by your establishment. Management of line queues and such like that, they should not be running into streets. Obviously, we're working with folks and we'll be working with retail and other folks to make sure that these are all managed, hopefully helping with some stanchions and other things to make it a little bit more uniformed and helpful. I'm going to move into showing all the different spaces in the public area that have been requested. I don't think there's any major changes, so I'll just roll through those. Most of these have been approved and might be just edited slightly. This was one closure that did not happen last year, but was approved in August, which is a partial street closure that may or may not happen, but is still requested should they need the space. It is to benefit proprietors on India Street. It is not a full street closure. It would be a partial street closure to allow for some decking and some tables in front of proprietors. That sidewalk is very dangerous. We could not put any tables there for sure. So again, parking spaces would be removed on that side, on the right side, to allow traffic to flow straight through. It would require a shift in a loading zone to the other side. Again, this was approved in August of last year. It was so late, it just was not implemented. So that is one of the considerations. Again, I'm just going to move through these. This is going to be the same federal at India Street for boarding house in the Pearl, which took out about 3 1-hour spaces. I'll ask you to remember this setup. This is the preferred setup to allow for sidewalks to be open to pedestrians. Boston and other folks tend to do this. We're just sensitive to removing too many parking spaces. But again, this may be a solution in some other areas. So this was set up last year. Same exact setup this year was requested. For all the street closures, again, pretty much the same request as last year. This is still dock between Easy and South Water behind Club Car. Again, it takes out just a few 1-hour parking spaces for private spaces, and that's negotiated with the property owner as far as how they park at the end of the street there. So they've worked out that deal. Same basic setup. We close it a little farther in so trucks can get in to empty there. So that's pretty much the same. Again, Oak Street between South Water and Federal, same setup. They're looking for decking again. This year that removes up to about 8 1-hour parking spaces. It benefits Queequeg's Town and Ventuno. With the decking, we have a couple of requirements to make sure the Athenaeum has clear coverage and exit from their backside there and can get to the path to the sidewalk, which they handled last year with ramps and other things. So those requirements are the same. They operated throughout last year, and it's going to be the same request. Right here, Gaslight, North Union between Maine and Cambridge, a slight difference. It would be the same area, blocked off past the alley that goes behind Murray's there. We're keeping that alley open and a little space to allow delivery trucks to continue in there because we do take out a loading zone. They have asked to deck this area with the same type of decking as Oak Street. So that is the one difference there. To make it a little bit safer and easier for folks to walk on this area too. And the sidewalks will remain clear. Next, Cambridge Street between South Water and Easy. This benefits Nautilus, in front of Nautilus, and also PPX, which is a special event location. It's not open for dinner every night, so occasionally in this area here, they are allowed dining. Nautilus is back here. We are going to pull this up a little so that the dining ends where Nautilus ends. So, and then this end of the street will still be left open so that deliveries can come through and that deliveries can get into this driveway here. So just a little bit of a pull up there on that location. Now to the sidewalk dining. This is Broad Street where we had 3 restaurants, Langueduc, Dune, After House. And then on the north side, Graydon House had a few tables as well that operated pretty well. I think there might be some cleanup here as far as wanting only 1 lane of dining so that there's 1 lane of pedestrian and that we have enough room. So that might be the area here. We don't want to see too much here where you're crushing people in. So that's something that I was referring to earlier. Ideally, I would love to take out the parking here and put the dining there, but that's a lot of spaces. So when I was referring to Federal Street there, that is the preference of ADA and some others to keep the sidewalk completely clear, but this is a pretty wide sidewalk, so we were able to get enough clearance on that. Main Street, we had dining or the Whale here on the south side. I don't have a picture, but on the north side, Lemon Press. Also down at Club Car had some tables in front here, but 1 lane that tended to be fine. And Backyard Barbecue here down on Lower Main Street as well, and they have no outdoor space at all. So this was it up here in the front. I think we got some issues and complaints with Main Street, especially over on the other side with Lemon Press being a takeout line and tables. So that is going to be reduced to make sure that that lane is clear. I think from all the feedback I got, making sure that there were clear pedestrian access was the biggest. It was a highly popular program, but again, people were just asking for and saying that there were some bunch ups there. So again, when we approve sidewalk spaces, luckily this year, we have more time to set up, measure, make sure that we can make some edits or some changes to help with that pedestrian flow. Finally, South Water Street, and I'll address, I know this is kind of a weird spot and different than others. We made some adjustments last year to make sure that people could still walk down this sidewalk and remove tables, and it's 1 lane as well. The reason we pulled this out here too is because people were kind of going into the street, and it is such a dangerous corner. We put a cement barrier at the end for any traffic coming in, and it just felt like a place that needed more space. We didn't feel safe putting tables in the street here, but did this because people were just naturally going into the street. So that is why that was done. But again, we are going to require that a lane of pedestrians can still easily walk through that area. So as far as public property, again, this is just similar to the others as to what we'll be asking to consider. The recommendation, and we can discuss this, is that approval of public spaces is effective no earlier than, we chose a week of April 19th, trying to start set up when traditionally Daffodil Weekend would start as the usual kickoff to our season. But again, what we're looking for from the board is when we think the earliest we would want to shut down any of these streets that are approved. And again, I won't schedule a shutdown unless they're absolutely ready to either put down decking, tables, and get ready. I don't want to close the street and have it sit empty. Again, if it rains for 2 weeks, we can't help that, but they have to be ready. So that is what we're looking for. And just lastly, again, we got comments that this was helpful for a lot of restaurants having these loading zones that converted into pickup zones last year, 15-minute zones that helped, that were numbered, that they can identify to folks to pick up. The one thing that we're working on with our group too is what we can do to make them stand out a bit more. Obviously, they need to be the same type of sign for HDC requirements and such, but we are looking for ways that people can notice that this is where that is. So we set it up pretty late last year, hopefully being earlier this year. A lot of folks still want to do takeout for a while until we get into the season. So we hope that we can continue these locations. And again, we have them pretty much in loading zone areas. And when the loading zone is done, it converts to that. We have some that are during the day, some all day, and some that are later for the evening. So we're looking to do that. So as I finish, I'll just go back. Things we're going to talk about as far as these approvals, public and private property, the streets and sidewalk dining, and discussing a couple of the other conditions that the board voted on last year, being curfews or establishing timelines for these spaces and about entertainment. And with that, I will stop my share and see if there's any questions from that.
Does anyone have questions this evening? Matt? Then Christy?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Amy, really, that was a good report. Thank you. I've got a couple questions. First is, who or how is the occupancy going to be enforced or checked, at the beginning and through the summer? How is that going to work?
Okay, so for occupancy, and it's a good question, when we approve these, we'll work through our internal groups, but whatever is established and approved currently by the building commissioner, unless there are a couple cases, and I know Millie's is a big one that we're still working on those conditions, whereas their maximum occupancy is lower due to septic and other health permit reasons. That final number will have to be determined, and generally building and fire do those inspections. I do so as well. As far as counting that number, I did so last summer, and health as well in those areas where their permit will lower that number. So it'll be typically the same groups that do go out and make those inspections on a normal basis. Will be doing so as well.
And a follow-up, I guess when you're doing it, the rules now for restaurants, if you put up plexiglass, you're allowed to be closer than 6 feet. So if plexiglass is up, I'm assuming you'll assume that all those tables will be used. Is that?
It depends. And I talked to someone about this today. Some of the plexiglass is being used in bar areas and such so that they can use the bars and have some closer seating. I think, that's probably where it's used the most so that they can actually utilize that space and not have to repurpose it. But it has to be approved. Anything of that would have to be approved with the health department as far as setup and distancing. So in some cases, it may increase it. Again, if they can, I don't know if there's many cases where they can get their whole occupancy in their usual space. It's possible. It's possible. But again, if they can, and it's raining, they can get them all in. They can't have more people in that additional space. So yeah, whatever.
Just a question. The only other one, how about non-liquor businesses? Sort of the ones down on Easy Street. What are the recommendations there, and how do they interact with what you're proposing here?
Great. So that's been a big topic of conversation. We've had some reach out with some of them, but since we have this pretty well established and we can work out the kinks in the next couple of weeks, I can pretty much probably in the next week send out to them the same information for them to apply for any sort of additional space or assistance with lines. We're going to do so anyway. I have some changes from last year I want to see in that area for safety. But I've already gotten a lot of feedback actually from a bunch of retail and restaurants, but we are going to afford them the same opportunity to reach out and apply for additional space so that we at least know where it is everywhere. So that's the plan.
That's really good. I want them to realize they're not second-class citizens just because they don't have liquor. Absolutely. We care about them just as much.
Yeah, and on that point, absolutely. We have to do this legally because of liquor licenses. And so I wanted to make sure that was out of the way with all these renewals and all the legal stuff. And then we can kind of get into that. But absolutely, we obviously have the time this year to do that thoughtfully. So that's next for sure.
Thank you. Christy?
Thank you. Just a couple questions for Amy through you, Dawn. And do you want feedback tonight in terms of curfew, or is that just?
Yeah, and that was I was looking for any sort of feedback so that we're prepared more for a vote, and we can certainly have more discussions on the 7th. But any feedback or anything that you're leaning this week would be helpful. Absolutely.
Okay. And do you know if there'll be street musicians this summer or permits for outdoor music?
Right. So that was one of my questions, and that has certainly been a hot topic among a lot of the establishments. We had allowed last year, I believe, just, light background music in some of these open spaces until 10 p.m. And the requirements right now, the state is allowing for some live music outdoors, obviously no singing indoors. So whatever the circumstances are at the time, what I'm recommending is for an allowance for those that may request live music in some of these spaces, that it be on like we would for an event, a 1-day permit situation, that it wouldn't be everyone can do it all the time. That's too difficult to really do across the board, but to allow for requests for special permits for these spaces, because they are temporary spaces. And I believe legally that would be okay to do, since it's a local license, if that would make sense to folks. And then based on whatever the circumstances are at the time.
Okay. I know sometimes we've had musicians in the past playing on Main Street, like guitar or violin.
Oh,
Will those be permitted this year?
Sorry, I might have misunderstood that question. I believe so. I think what I would recommend, and again, it'd be based on whatever the protocol is at the time. And I believe now, obviously being outdoors, some of that is allowed, but again, there's spacing requirements. You can have singing outdoors, but it's like 25 feet between you and the first row. And I don't know anywhere we have 25 feet. So I think as things begin to loosen, we have to consider where. Before it was a little bit looser as far as where they exactly were, if we can identify spaces that wouldn't be in a crowded area. And when it is allowed, yeah, I think when it is allowed, we can address it. And if we have space, but again, we're going to start laying down this plan and see who's where, what's happening, and then fill in the spaces as we can. We would like to see more life in that area and entertainment if we can, for very sure.
Thanks. And just my last comment, I know how much time has gone into putting this together, and I would just have to say that I hope we're still looking at what 2022 is going to look like, because I think very quickly the fall is going to come around the corner and businesses are going to want to make the decision on if they should buy heaters or not. And It's going to be, okay, what's next? And so as much kind of legwork as we could do now to get that prepared, I just think that would help businesses.
Yeah, thank you. And you brought up that point I know we've talked about in the task force as well, and what some restaurants have said, which makes sense. We've talked about HGC requirements, making it look right, making sure the umbrellas are the right color or don't have advertising. And the point that they made, which was a good one, is that until we know that this is an investment in the future, that we can have some of these spaces, or that this is something that can be used in a space, it's hard for them to really invest in things. So if they've gotten from a vendor some of these umbrellas that they can use, that's what they've used. So we've asked for a little bit of lenience in that area, but that's a good point, that until they know there's an investment in a future, they won't be able to invest in some of that. So yes, we would, once we take a breath from this, we definitely like to talk about the future of this type of thing. For sure.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Amy, you're looking for feedback on curfew. Do you have any kind of a recommendation?
Well,
are we talking about music or when dining ends? Those kind
and a lot of towns have done this as far as the outdoor spaces are handled as a group. So I think even Boston is similar, doing the same thing, where the new outdoor spaces are approved until 10 p.m. During the week. And I believe weekends, they are a little bit later to 11 p.m. Whether there is any sort of idea that is wanted for these new spaces as far as entertainment, again, I think the light background music is fine to be approved for those spaces until 10 p.m. Anything outside of that for these new spaces needs to be applied for as a special permit. And whatever their current license allows for indoors, if it is allowed, should be fine with the spacing and all of that. So if there's any desire by the board, and again, this can happen as we go. Last year, we felt the need to put a 12 midnight curfew because of the crowds gathering, because of that issue. If that's something you want to do along the way, we can. If we can go into the season saying, okay, we're at our usual times, outdoor spaces are until 10, or if you want to go later, we can do that. And is there any desire for a curfew across the board? Is there any reason for it? We don't have to decide right now. But I think when we go through this, we should have at least a level set for these outdoor spaces. And if there's any discussion for anything further, and health should kind of chime in on that too, as well, if there's any need for that. But again, as we go through this, if we feel a need for it, we can certainly address it again.
Thank you. Leslie Forbes has her hand up, and then Matt and Libby. Leslie?
Hi, my question is, I'm not quite sure what the next step is. This is a discussion for the board. When does the public comment, and when does the board then vote?
I think the intention is for us to take a vote on April 7th at our next meeting. Amy can correct me if I'm wrong. You are certainly welcome to make a comment now, and the public can certainly comment at any time on April 7th as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that's in reference, I'm going to say, to the Nantucket and the Millies. We have several things that we want to work on with that group. Specifically, I left it off the list this one time to make sure folks knew that we weren't approving anything, and that once I get this set, we'll get to them and we'll have a conversation all together and kind of work through those issues for sure. So they will be addressed directly with that group.
Amy, you've been great.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Libby and then Matt.
Matt, feel free to go. I just wanted to make a clarification on something.
No, you can go first, Libby.
Okay. I just want to mention curfew. I think we want to be a little bit careful about that word, because it technically, I think, means that's when everybody goes home. Right. And we're really talking about hours of closure, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's a good point.
That is a good point.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Matt?
I think when we have I was going to say the wrong word, but when we have the closure discussion, I think, we should be, I think we want to make sure that this is successful this year if we want it to continue. So I think, part of that is, not going too late, not having it become, people drinking and drunk from, 11 till 1:30 or 2 in the morning. I think it behooves the businesses and all of us to, to have it be similar to last year, maybe a little bit later, and have it be really successful and build on it, then go the other way. It's easier to let the reins out than pull them back, is what I always say to my employees. And the other point, on that is, I'm going to want to know, what is the coverage going to be, what days and hours down there with the police and with you guys, so that the businesses have some help. We all are seeing what's happening in Miami right now, and Miami isn't the only place that's going to be serving entitled, drunk, entitled people who are ready to let loose. We're going to see a lot of them in whale pants this summer. And so I think we want to make sure that, we have that in front and center of how do we keep how do people have a good time without turning it into Mardi Gras every night? Because if that happens, the police will be recommending closures, we'll be recommending closures, and this something is a really positive thing will go sideways and go away. And I don't want to see that.
Amy, then Christy.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and agreed. And I think some of in our group too, and speaking of some of the restaurants, really want to encourage and come up with ideas of how we attract families into town in an earlier type of thing and have entertainment or things available for them. That was a big point that several of the restaurants brought up and were interested in discussing. So I think there's support in that with several of them, and wanting to expand the reach of who is coming down and who is coming to the restaurants. So I think that's definitely been on the queue, and I think we have some ideas that we want to work through as well as we get this set up.
Christy?
Thank you. I was going to mention what Amy mentioned about bringing families downtown, but I also wanted to say that I agree with Matt about kind of setting the policy now so that businesses can plan. I think if we start the season saying you're open till midnight and then make a decision to push it back to 11 or 10, that's going to mess them up for staffing and, having everything organized on their end. And, they were able to adapt very quickly last year, but I think this year we want to give them as much lead time. So I'd feel more comfortable setting that before we go into the summer. And with that, I think, following some place like Boston, where it's a big city, I'd feel comfortable following what they do, where it's until 10 on the weekdays and 11 on the weekends. But that's just where I'm kind of feeling right now.
Just to jump in on that, I mean, I just like it to continue to be consistent with food service, with people seated at tables. And I'm not sure how many seatings restaurants want to do. I'm very supportive of them spreading it out and doing more seatings if it's in that more controlled, like, yes, we have 3 seatings of reservations and they're all going to be there for around 90 minutes. And then if it's a 9 o'clock seating and it's appropriate that ends around 10:30, then I'd kind of like a little feedback from the restaurants on what they want their plan to be. But I know that we're going to continue to have the same concerns about people standing around close to each other with drinks and not food, and that, creating spread of COVID essentially. Amy?
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, that's correct. And food service is still required, and I expect it to be for a while as far as these establishments. And honestly, on a legal basis, a common vicular is supposed to always have some sort of food available. I think we got away with that for a while, but those establishments, even in a non-COVID basis, should have food available. So it's a good practice to have, honestly. So, but I think that's going to exist for a while. We've heard that the state is going to probably, if things continue, would expand to allowing up to 10 per table and removing the 90-minute limit. We expect that to be what happens next. But I think the food service requirement will be sticking with us for a while.
Yeah, I would be looking for some feedback on how they want to manage their reservations in terms of seatings. Like I said, like if the 9 o'clock seating makes sense with the way they time everything out, then I'd want them to be able to have until 10:30 to turn that table and give people the proper experience. Yep. You don't want to be kicking people out the door like, it's 10, you got to leave, no dessert for you.
Right, correct. Okay.
So I guess we'll continue this. Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa. You were tucked over in the corner on me.
I came in really close, maybe you'd see my hand. Thanks so much. Just a quick question, Amy, maybe I missed this, but are there limitations going right now? And I think maybe this will change too on how many people can be seated at one time? Because I think to your point, Don, that affects restaurants' ability to turnover. So, if you've got a table of a seating of 6 at 9, there's no way you're getting out at 10:30, right? So are there limitations right now?
The limitations for restaurants right now are maximum of 6 per table, 6 feet apart in a 90-minute seating. So that's what we expect to possibly increase to 10 per table. And remove the 90-minute limit requirement. So, but I will absolutely get some more feedback from them on that as well.
Thank
in
you.
Other towns.
Before we move on, Leslie Forbes. Leslie, oh, there she is.
All right, this is, I wonder if the purview of licensing includes disposal of trash. I know a lot of the out-of-town restaurants, because there's so much more takeout, and if people go to a beach, the trash ends up there and the town disposes of it. That certainly is what has happened at Millie's. And there are other restaurants that's true too. So does the licensing cover trash, or is that a Board of Health concern? Where does that get regulated?
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, and that's an issue we know about, and that's one of the things we want to focus on once we get this set up with. And I know this situation we're talking about, as far as we're working on it obviously as a group in this situation, and determining the responsibility obviously of the specific restaurant to assist in that situation. So I don't want to answer completely on how that's going to work, but that's one of the solutions that we're working on and how to address that. But we are very well aware of that issue last year, and how we, with our resources and others, and the restaurant's responsibility in that maintenance as well. So that's what we need to address.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So we'll reconvene on this on the 7th at our next meeting. Are there any other COVID-related reports, comments, or updates before I move on? Okay, seeing none. Next up is public comment for items not related to COVID-19 and not otherwise on our agenda for discussion. This is the opportunity for the public to raise an issue. I see Robert DaCosta has his hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I just have two quick things I wanted to bring up. The first is, as you, I don't know if you're aware or not, but there is a shellfish closure in Nantucket Harbor for from the mouth of the creek into the middle of Warren's Landing. As we all know, scallop season ends this week, but that's a pretty big area that we can't fish in, and there's quite a few scallops in there that we haven't been able to harvest this year, unfortunately. And this closure is due to fecal contamination from no one seems to know where, but I want to know what the town's plan is to try to figure this out, because you know, this is something that should not be happening, and we need to fix it. And the second thing I wanted to know is, what's the status on dredging the ditches? I mean, I brought this up when I was still on the board. I know you did a study, and the study came back and said we should dredge the ditches. But the bridge at First Point right now literally has about 2 inches of water in it, to where the herring can't even get into the head of the pond to spawn. And that's a major issue for us. That's our major spawning area for herring. And now we're going into another season where these herring can't get into the pond to spawn. That's it. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I know that Jeff Carlson will get back to you on these items.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any other public comments this evening? There's no new business.
Just for the public and for Bobby, Jeff has responded already via email. It's come into us, and he's the ditch. He's saying Rob is maintaining that, is actively managing that, and the other answer from Jeff is it's longer. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's the Nantucket closure. They've been working with marine fisheries testing to identify what's going on there. So he's responding to both of those.
Yeah.
And if Bobby has more concerns, please, respond and text to us or email to us.
Yeah, we'll follow up as we do with other public comment items.
Yes.
Thanks, Matt. Next up, approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. We could take the minutes, warrants, and both warrants as one motion if no one has any changes.
So moved.
To approve. Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Those carry unanimously. And then we have 2 pending contracts this evening. I think we just wanted to mention how fortunate we were on the Wait Drive item to receive a $1.5 million grant from MassWorks that we accepted this summer. And that was the first time Nantucket as a community has been a recipient of a MassWorks grant. So that was a really big deal for us. And I appreciate everyone who helped make that happen. Is there a motion on the contracts or any other questions?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Libby Gibson. Sorry.
Libby gets to vote now. Uh-oh.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Did I ask Libby how I'm supposed to vote on this? Aye.
Don Holgate. That's the first time I've ever done that.
Yeah, better not do that again.
Next up, we have citizen departmental requests. We have a request for the town manager to have the authority to sign a special permit amendment application to the Tacoma Green Housing Project at 2 Fairgrounds Road.
I think, Madam Chair, that the housing director can address this. And just quick aside, it's actually 6 Fairgrounds. Just
Yes, I meant to write that down earlier. Tucker?
Thank you very much, Libby and Madam Chair. Yes, somewhat related to the grant related to Waite Drive. This is a request regarding the housing that will go along Waite Drive, the 64 units known as Tacoma Green. The board might recall at the time that the bid was awarded to the developers, there had been a desire to have a component of the development be at market rate so that no Nantucketer would be income ineligible to live at this development theoretically. And so in the original special permit, that number was written into the permit as a hard number of 13 units. Because of the significant delay, the 3-year delay due to the appeal lawsuit, as you can imagine, costs to construct have gone up substantially. And therefore, the developer would like to make a minor modification to the special permit to still provide for some market rate units, but there may be some additional subsidy available to them if they are willing to restrict actually some of the market rate units with income restrictions. So they are going to the planning board to request that the hard number of 13 be modified to say that at least 51 of the 64 units would be income restricted and at least 6 of the units would be market rate. And therefore, we are asking that you give the town manager the authority to sign that application as the town is the owner of the land.
Does anybody have any questions? Would someone make a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully that helps move
Can I
things
make a
along.
quick comment? Reading, I am a little worried. I read through the planning board decision again, and we're promising potentially X amount of parking spots outside, et cetera. I would like to see that at some point modified and amended. If we have 64 units, we can, with their leases, we can be, limiting it to 64 cars plus visitors. I think we have to start thinking, if one of our goals is, not to have 130, not to have as many vehicles, we have to be willing to accept that that we're not going to have parking lots through all of Fairgrounds. I'm very concerned. I try to handle my own employees to keep the number of cars down for the benefit of the people living there and everyone else. I think we have to rethink our thought process. And I have to say that because I read that and I'm thinking, boy, I don't know if I would have been so in favor of it if I thought we were guaranteeing a parking lot forever off site. So I just want to make that comment for the record. Thank you.
Yeah, on site, they're providing, I think, 80 something parking spaces. Is that correct? If I remember. And I know that we have had extensive discussion about the parking on Waite Drive and that not being allowed to be overnight parking. But maybe that's not completely clear. And there is the option of the town lot, but at some point that should probably be by paid permit.
Right, and the decision is written that, that we will give it to them if needed, somewhere. And I think that that's, maybe I read it wrong, but I don't think we should be promising it. We should be limiting the number of cars that can park there if needed. We're going to need that space for other uses or for other buildings. So I don't, anyway.
Okay, that's really another topic. But next we have a request for letter of support to Department of Housing Community Development for the local preference for 31 Fairgrounds Road project.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chair and the board. Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. This is simply a letter of support from the board to DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, in conjunction with the recent local action unit application that was sent in regarding 31 Fairgrounds Road and the development of 22 units to serve exclusively year-rounders. They are a project that Housing Nantucket is undertaking in collaboration with the trust and Billy Cassidy. So by requesting local preference, it basically is guaranteeing that we get the highest possible percentage of year-rounders living there, which is, of course, we would like. So we ask for your support. Thank you.
Any questions? A motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, thank you, Tucker. Next, I believe David Gray is on for this. We have a sewer department request for waiver of the town noise bylaw for sewer work that is happening on Surfside Road that they need to do at night to not disrupt.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, David.
Thank you for having me. This is to seek a request of the town's noise bylaw. Due to some recent meetings we've had because of the sewer area sewer project that's coming up, it looks like we'll be shifting almost all of our work to nighttime to accommodate traffic, to accommodate all the school and crossings and issues. This will be from approximately 4 p.m. at night till by the time they get off the road, I believe it's going to be like 2:30 in the morning. This is going to take and alleviate a lot of the concerns that the school has raised, NERDA, and a bunch of other issues that could come up with the daytime construction. I'll go into it further when we do our projects report, but there will be some daytime work, but we're looking to do most of this work during the evening hours and nighttime.
Does anybody have any questions, comments, motions? Melissa?
Have the neighbors been notified that of this, that this work will be taking place?
This change tonight just took place on a meeting we had on site on Monday. So notices have not gone out yet.
Okay.
But they will, correct?
Well, they will be. We're going to have a project-specific website as well. We will have continuous weekly progress reports and updates for the following week's schedule. So we'll know where the areas are where they'll be working. We have an approved detail and detour plan already. So that will all be discussed a little further on in the meeting tonight.
I guess just Don, as a follow-up, I'm slightly concerned about voting on the approval before neighbors get a chance to know this is going to happen, but I also understand the catch-22 that this work must happen and that there's probably greater disruption during the day, but having that kind of noise till 2:30 in the morning, there's a lot of families that live along that stretch of Surfside Road. So I'm feeling a little bit torn about this, honestly, right now.
We won't have another meeting until the 7th, which is after this work needs to commence. And I mean, just for the record, I will hear this. So I'm with you to whoever is impacted. Erica?
Thank you. I just wanted to note too that this project is being done. It's not like the entire stretch is going to be, 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. It's going to be done in sections. So it will impact certain people at one time. But the alternative is that road is going to be completely shut down during the day, impacting schools, impacting buses, impacting workers. And at night, although it's going to disrupt, some sleeping patterns, people are going to have a much easier time getting in and out of their properties, getting to and from work, getting to and from school. I would say also that this decision doesn't come to you, or this request doesn't come to you lightly. There were a lot of people involved in this: police, fire, sewer, the schools, town administration. And really this was one of the only ways to really advance this project in a safe manner.
Melissa?
No, I thank you very much to Erica for that explanation. I don't doubt that this was great consideration. And I think, I'm happy to approve this. I think that we just, to the best of your ability, David, to navigate that 2 a.m. to 2:30 a.m. Stop time, particularly during times where families along that stretch have to get their kids up for school in the morning.
Oh no, that's a big concern. And,
okay.
One of the biggest reasons too is there's 2 sections of the dig that are going to be over 17 foot deep, and we could not have any traffic passing the trench. So that was one of our biggest safety concerns as well. But it's probably the lesser of 2 evils, not the optimum, but.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you very much. May I add to that there will be public outreach on this project. This has been kind of condensed it feels kind of late. But we've already talked about, if this is approved tonight, there'll be an ad in the paper next week. We're going to be doing web outreach, and we will be notifying abutters.
Yeah, I think everyone needs to get a notice.
Most likely, a lot of it's going to be
a shocker to have that.
Most likely, a lot of this will be done door to door. We'll probably have personnel going door to door with flyers.
Thank you, David. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Thank you. Next up, we have a public hearing to consider the 2021 seasonal liquor license renewals. Amy Baxter. Don.
Yeah.
Oh, back up. Oh, Melissa, go ahead.
I'm going to recuse from this vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's that time of year. I'll go over this is seasonal liquor license renewals, and this is for liquor only. In December, we do annual renewals, which is annual liquor licenses, and that includes things such as common vicular and entertainment, which are local licenses and renewed on an annual basis. So for those wishing to comment, this is solely on the liquor licenses for seasonals. Seasonal liquor licenses are those that are open and can only be open for liquor service from April the 1st to January the 15th or any portion thereof. What I like to say as a recommendation is renewal of seasonal liquor licenses is on the condition that the full renewal process is completed and approved by licensing, health, building, fire, and all required town and state requirements are met and fees paid. This renews the license. It does not issue it. They need to go through this process to do so. And just quickly, again, I know I've gotten some comments of folks thinking certain issues or concerns weren't being addressed by this. This is a renewal, and per legal, alcohol licenses are entitled to be automatically renewed if they are for the same type of license and location. In order to deny renewal for some reason or make any sort of additional restrictions, The licensing board cannot simply vote to renew, but needs to provide notice and a hearing. So folks, certainly it's public hearing, can make public comments, but please understand that any sort of restrictions or any sort of discussion on a license would have to be noticed and held separately in a public hearing. We have provided a chart of all the seasonal liquor licenses. There are 51 out of our 100 liquor licenses. And this includes all on and off premise licenses in the seasonal category. So any questions?
Any questions? This is a public hearing. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment, feel free to raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone, no board members. Therefore, I will close the public hearing and we can go to a vote. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the town manager's report. This is an overview of large-scale projects in a number of different areas. I just wanted to recognize the chair of the Historical Commission has a majority of the board here. And if they wish to make some comments after these presentations, I will, they should call their meeting to order at this time. I think, yes, Hillary needs to raise her hand. Thank you. Erica? Allow Hillary Report to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, good evening.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much. I can't see who's in the meeting, but this is Hillary Hedges Report, Chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission, and we appreciate the opportunity to make comments. We did post a public meeting, and I'd like to call my meeting to order. I can't see who's here because I'm just participating in the webinar. So, Dawn, I might need to ask
yeah,
you.
Hillary, you've got Angus, McLeod, Clement Dirks, David Silver, Mickey Rowland, and Tom Montgomery.
Okay, so could I have a motion to open our public meeting? Angus, maybe you could hear me and give us a motion.
Angus, can you hear me?
His hand's raised in the participant list, Dawn.
Yeah, I see him.
He's in with us. He just needs to unmute.
Oh, there. Angus?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yes. I would like to move that motion, please.
Thank you, Angus. And, you know, in the service of expediency and being a guest in your meeting, I'm not going to do a roll call vote given how awkward it is, but just imagine we're all in a big room and everybody is sitting in the audience and we have opened our meeting, and we thank you very much for hearing us.
Thank you, Hillary. I'll turn this back over to Libby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have a number of what we are calling large scale projects that are either underway, about to be underway, or are in the planning stages for getting underway. And I thought it would be a good idea to give the board a current update. So the various project managers are going to be giving you just an update, an overview, and it isn't meant to be an exhaustive review, just a general update. And I just would like to point out that I know there is some discussion about sidewalks that may arise when we get to those projects. We are working for the board's consideration and the Historical Commission's consideration on a sidewalk policy for when historic sidewalks are intended to be reconstructed. And that policy just isn't quite ready yet, but it will be shortly, and it will be put onto a board agenda. So just FYI on that. And the first projects we are going to be taking a review of are police marine projects. And I think the first, Deputy Chief Gibson is going to be taking us through these, I believe. And I think the first one is the town pier. Yes, town pier improvements and floating dock replacement. And then Charlie, maybe you can just continue going through them. They include the Harbor Master building replacement, the Harbor Master layup yard and workshop facility, the F Street bulkhead in Nantucket, and the Loran dormitory exterior renovations. So I won't go announce each one of them. You can just take us through.
Great, thanks. First one up is the Town Pier Improvement Project. And as you're all aware, this has been a saga probably since 2008 that when this really got started. We've gone through several storms and numerous permitting hurdles. So where we are now with the project, we're right at the Army Corps of Engineers in the Chapter 91 waterways licensing. We've had all of the public hearings and it's sitting on the desk of those agencies waiting for them to take action. We've told that they're waiting on the Army Corps of Engineers, who just recently reassigned it to a new analyst because the one that was handling it had retired. So they did ask some questions, so it is on top. So hopefully they will get some action. When we do get the permits, it'll involve extending the wave barrier, which is at the toe of the fixed pier, so that the waves coming in from the northeast don't destroy the floating dock system that's been subject of numerous repairs over the years. So when that toe of the fixed pier is extended to stop the wave action, then we'll be able to have the floating dock survive storms. As part of the project involved some dredging, which required additional permitting, and we did do that dredging last year. So the dredging is complete. So now we're just waiting for the permits to actually install the floating docks. So if we get the permits, we should be ready to go for next year. And so we can just, any questions on that, then we'll just roll into the next one.
I can't see everyone, so you might need to speak out if you have a question. Probably roll into the next one.
Okay, Erica. And Erica, if you just back up a little bit, just so we can just diagram, so you can understand when I say the toe of the fixed pier is that red line at the top. And that's where the wave action was coming out of the northeast and really doing damage to the floating dock system. So we had a wave analysis done a couple of years ago, which said that to have the floating dock system last for throughout any severe storms, that needed to be done. So that and the floating dock system is what we're waiting for permits for. Okay, the next one is the Harbor Master building. This is the office building on Washington Street, which is mainly just a large handicap accessible toilet room and shower facilities for the waterfront and for the general public. We had a study done of the existing building a couple of years ago, which basically said the building that's there now is not suitable for rehabilitation. We went to town meeting. It was funded for replacement. We did receive $1 million Seaport grant for the building. We were almost ready to go forward with it and COVID hit. So that pushed everything back quite a ways. So we have all the permits done. HDC is done. All of our waterfront permits are done. We expect to be going out to bid for this building within the next couple of weeks. Our plan is to start construction after the season in September this year. And hopefully you can back up to that funding line there, Erica. That's the appropriation, what we've spent. If you haven't been aware of it, it's out there that the cost of building materials is skyrocketed. So we have some fears about if we can have enough funds to get this, but we'll see. This is the price of a 2x4 is like $7 a piece right now, where it used to be $3. So prices and construction costs are going through the roof at the moment, but we'll see. So hopefully we can stay on our budget. And as I said, the bid should be back. It's going out to bid this month, and the bids will be back towards the end of April. Any questions on this?
Don, this is Christy.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, I know the last time I came to the board, we were concerned about the parking spots. I didn't see that in any of the plans. Are you able to set an update with the parking spots or discuss that?
The parking spaces that we talked about where they are in the front of the building now will stay, just the same as the board requested at that meeting, that those 3 parking spots stay there. And that's going to continue. The only issue that we have that we really don't have any control about, there is some plan for a bike path to go through there. But as far as we're concerned and for the construction of the building, those parking spots that out front when the building's completed will still be there.
Perfect, thank you.
Anyone else, please speak out because I can't see you all. Okay, we can move on to the next project.
This is the Harbor Master layup yard and workshop facility. As you may recall through the several Capcom hearings and FinCom hearings we've had on this project, the Harbor Master has no real storage area for their equipment and no real maintenance area that they could work inside. So as you see there, they have equipment scattered throughout the island, especially this time of year. A lot of the lifeguard stands are in the bushes at Orcoa Ave where the buoys are, and they really do need a place to keep all their equipment where they can work on it and throughout the year. So there was an area set aside behind the airport just across from Nantucket Community Sailing for this facility. We've just broken ground this week. Footings will be going in for the building within the next couple of days, and this project building should be up within a month or so. And this is phase 1 of the building, which is just the building itself. Phase 2 will be finishing the site, security, fencing, and lighting. So that project's underway. We hope to, as I said, hope to have a majority of it done shortly.
Anyone jump in if there are questions or comments? Or we can move to the next project.
Okay, this is the F Street pier, or as the engineers call it, it's a bulkhead. We call it a pier. It's the end of F Street in Nantucket. This pier is really showing some signs of age. The steel sheet piling that actually contains the pier is rusted away. There's some holes in it. This has been a project that has been in progress since, I believe, 2016, again, hung up with permitting. We do have all of the permits in hand, which took several years, but we do have them. What happened with this project was to go out to bid to replace the sheet piling, which is the steel that encases the pier. That went out to bid in I guess the bids came back in last March. And we didn't have enough in the appropriation because the plan was that we would go to that next annual town meeting that would have been April of 20 to fully fund this project because we only had enough money for permitting and engineering. But as you all know, there was no town meeting, so the project had to be put on hold. We had a low bid of $638,000, and now because of the delay, we have to put this back out to bid again. That will be going out to bid within the next few weeks. And we hope to have bids back on this by May. And then we have an article in for this June town meeting to fund this project. So we'll see where the numbers come in. And there's some pictures here. And I want to know there was some questions that I guess at last week's meeting, Mr. Greeter brought up about there's some existing damage there. If you just stop right there, that's what he was referring to is this corner of the pier, which is the dirt that's holding that asphalt up had collapsed through a hole. So I've talked to Rob McNeil at DPW. So we're just going to pull that plate back, fill it with some stone, and then put the plate back on there. So that should be safe and sufficient for this season. And we plan funding being approved in June, plan to do this work in September, and this should be finished by December of this year.
Thank you. Any questions from anyone? Okay, next.
And this is the the Loran dorm that we house our seasonal officers at and the parking control officers. This is out at former Loran Station on Low Beach Road. And this building is in some serious shape. That it was originally built in the 50s. A little addition was done in the early 60s and really hasn't had any work since. So the plan is to replace all the doors and windows. As you can see, they're in rough shape, and to clad the walls with sheathing and shingle it. So this work is underway right now. Walls are being repaired and the windows are being replaced. And we hope we have some serious liquidated damages if the contractor isn't done by June 1st. So if you're ever out in the area, you can drive by, you can see the work is underway right now. As I add, this is phase one of this rehab, is that we have some funding hopefully being appropriated this town meeting to address some septic issues and sanitary piping in the building and to connect that septic system to the municipal sewer in Sconset. And that's all of our projects.
Thank you.
If there's no questions.
I'm not seeing any questions, but it's really, really good to get an update on all of this stuff and have it for the public as well. Children's Beach Pump Station.
Next, the DPW director is going to take us through the Children's Beach Pump Station, the Novadear Field House, 131 Pleasant Street renovations, and sidewalk improvements at Easy Street and Lower Broad, and a separate project, Pleasant Sparks Williams Lane, and Waite Drive, phase one, and the Washington Street, Francis Street intersection improvements. Ready, Rob?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Libby. Children's Beach Stormwater Pump Station has had quite a history in the past few years. We have a consultant that's been working with us to augment or implement the temporary repairs and reintroduce new submersible pumps, which was done during last year's early stages of COVID, I think April, May timeframe. And we saw over the course of this late spring and summer, and since then, really cessation of the extra high water table in the Brant Point area. The entire watershed that is tributary to Children's Beach has been being studied since then. The consultant has developed a model and is finishing the memo on that, which will inform what the future of that project will ultimately look like. Since then, there's been a tremendous effort on the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee in developing policy regarding sea level rise. And obviously the select board have adopted the recommendations of the committee to really take a look at this. So that is something that's changed along the way that will begin to drive the discussions on what the future of this station will look like, as the modeling is telling us that ultimately the entire facility will be underwater at the end of its useful life. So we're about to embark on a design of what this is going to look like in the future. And we're going to be wrestling, I think, first with what the sea level rise impacts will be, where ultimately the location of the pump station will be best suited in the future, and come back with some recommendations. If we move forward, the design is expected to kick off after approval for funding at town meeting, and we will continue those discussions with
the coastal resiliency folks and this board. We could probably go through the slides here. Next slide, please.
Yeah, anyone continue to speak out?
Yeah, one point specific to energy efficiencies. This pump station, because it's drawing groundwater as well as rainwater, runs almost continuously, runs very, very frequently, and so therefore is using up a tremendous amount of energy. Just to point that out to folks. In the future, it's possible, depending on the ultimate location of this facility and the frequency and the size of it, et cetera, we may be able to better control that with remote operation and remote sensing. So that's something we will look into.
Yeah, Don, it's Matt. Yeah, I think we need to move forward with this. It's, you know, Rob, it's an important project. But the thing that's interesting to me on coastal resiliency, and I listened to a Dr. Hill, she was on one of the Remain panels and talked about Brant Point specifically. Even if we were able to block every bit of water from coming in from the ocean, the increase, you know, say we put a, you know, say we could find a way to put a, you know, block that with a dam or something into that whole Brant Point area, the sea level rise itself is going to make the water table increase.
Sure.
So that was which, you know, and they basically have done a study where the water increased, you know, went up 3 feet, and it increased 3 feet at the near shore. And it was like 3.5 miles before it was 2.5 feet. So we're going to, you know, so we have to, when we start thinking about areas like that, those houses are going to have to live with the water because we're not going to be able to pump it fast enough.
Sure.
We might be able to in the short term, you know, 10, 20 years or something. But when it gets to be feet of water every day, it's a whole different animal. And so that's the, you know, what Rob, and I'm just putting sort of some meat on the bone of what Rob is talking about. That's the problem we're dealing with. Even if we could block every bit of water and the storm surge and everything, we're still going to be facing water coming up. All those areas that were wetlands and have all been tidal infilled, which is most of that area, are all going to want to be underwater on a regular basis. So it's going to be a tough, you know, we've got a lot of work to figure it out.
A couple last points on that, Matt, to follow up would be the discussion in the short term is going to be something along the lines of, is this Children's Beach stormwater pump station or Lily Pond or Center Street stormwater pump station? And that's the discussions that we're really kicking around. Because to be frank, Lily Pond is about 3 feet height differential between or above the Children's Beach pump station elevation, which isn't very much when you start talking about, you know, inundation due to sea level rise.
Yeah, the wetlands came all the way down the street, right past the Nantucket Hotel, you know, right down the lane where the new house is being done, and there's a wetland right into Lily Pond. So a lot of that is infill. Nantucket Hotel might be infill. You know, a lot of that area. It's amazing.
Next project, please. Okay, Nobody or Fieldhouse. Nobody or Fieldhouse is the version 2.0 or 3.0. Essentially, we held public information sessions to boil down the essentials for this project, and ultimately, with feedback from all kinds of sources, we have boiled it down to an efficient 3-season weather shelter with bathrooms ultimately fed by septic with town water. This is out to bid, and bids are scheduled to come in right before town meeting. And that is, the project itself is contingent on $1 million supplemental to fund the expected 1.6 cost of the project. The 0.6 is basically the remainder in the budget from the original authorizations at town meeting, including some money from CPC. So essentially, it's a pretty basic footprint that is ultimately 46 by 45 in total dimension. The interior is just a large open space. It's served by sliding barn doors on both ends. The front face, as you can see, has a couple person doors and then some other garage doors, overhead garage doors that are in keeping with the same barn style. The rear of the building has 3 bathrooms, and that's a requirement by code for a recreational facility. One for family, one for a men's room and a women's room. And then inside is, again, open, and it just has a mechanical closet. So this is intended to be essentially open wide to allow a nice summer breeze through, but shelter from the sun for families that are out and playing or here to watch a game, as well as shelter from weather, inclement weather, if there's a scheduled practice and kids have to go someplace to find shelter. Again, 3-season design. This is not intended to, it's not heated, and it's not intended to be year-round, similar to the operations of the facility. The footprint has been designed ultimately to be doubled and would be able to be expanded as the demand for its use continues to expand as the facility expands. It's possible to do that. There's a small covered porch that takes up the rest of it off the backside. And so the rear of the building is essentially facing the existing synthetic turf field. Next slide, please. Again, the engineer's opinion of probable construction costs at 1.6. I listed out the existing funding and the remainders. With the current expenditures, we're looking for $1 million at town meeting as a supplemental. Next slide, please. And with the bid opening just before town meeting, we'll have a hard number to be able to present to the voters. And ultimately, if given authorization to proceed, construction would be expected to begin this summer and could certainly be balanced with the use of the field as well as use of the drive-in theater. This is considered to be daytime construction. It's well off the street, and the contractor would be expected to be in a pretty well-defined and confined work zone. Beyond that, our permits are in place or pending. We do have the last two, the National Grid Power Service and the FAA height clearance approval those are pending.
Don, this is Matt.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I've just got to say, I helped build the Delta fields. I think sports are unbelievably important, but I look at that number, 1.6 million. I assume there'd be a kitchen in it or something else for a shed, with 3 bathrooms. It almost makes me want to stop being a baker. I should build sheds. It's incredible, Rob. And so I'm not sure. I don't know what to do about that. I know everything's gone up in cost, and I know there's the bidding laws and everything else. But is there any talk of having a kitchen in it? What's the use of the inside? Is it for storage?
So it's a great question, and frankly, I had pretty much the exact same opinion, Matt, when the opinion of probable construction cost first came over on email. I said there must be some kind of mistake here. I will say that clearly, the island, there's a couple different factors that are happening right now. The expectations of the construction climate, that it's rather difficult to get people and contractors interested in a municipal project of this size because it is so small. Secondly, the island factor, and generally the estimators will tell you that they apply a 40% markup to standard off-island numbers. So I keep saying to people that I believe I have full faith that we will be seeing numbers that are more competitive than this. But to be honest, when we went to the capital committee, these are the numbers that we base it on, and these are professionals that do this for any number of. They do it professionally, so it's rather difficult to question them. These are three full service handicap accessible bathrooms, and generally, in speaking with Charlie and others that have been building municipal facilities in the most recent history in the last 10 years, they'll tell you that a municipal bathroom by itself is about a $300,000 venture.
Why don't we keep running through the projects if that's
Sure.
okay? And I just to let the public know, I'm going to take comments at the end.
And I'm picking myself up off the floor, Don. I'm just getting up now.
I know, Matt, we all are.
It is killing me. I'm a cheap Yankee. I'm dying here looking at that.
So 131 Pleasant Street renovations, sort of a continuation of that same discussion, Matt. The architect's opinion of probable construction costs that may or may not have made it to your desk was about $780,000 for the renovations. So those have been pulled back, and we addressed only the essentials because ultimately we were looking at no more than a 10-year maximum use of that building, which also sets the stage for lots of other discussions. So the project in and of itself includes obviously the trailer move from the school to My Comet to then here. The trailer is in its proposed location. The contractor is continuing to work to get that cladded, painted, etc. But the building itself is just the administration space pictured over on the right-hand side, the first floor and the second floor upstairs piece. It does not include any work inside the apparatus bays except for connecting communications. So just for the building renovations, we've been working on modifications to water, bringing water, sewer, and communications and electrical to the trailer. We've introduced through a grant process the electric vehicle charging station to the parking area that will ultimately be modified and reconfigured to provide a lot more parking there off street. We are looking inside the building. We are doing some hazardous material abatement based on the construction of the original building back in the 80s, I believe, or 70s. There's largely asbestos flooring that needs to be removed. There is, so that comes out. There's flooring work to be done. There's communications and electrical work to be done to abandon old and to update with new for all the workstations for the proposed occupants. And then there's some plumbing updates and painting. So that is currently a lot of the things that are going on there. Sketched in here also are some of the concepts being kicked around by the designers of the Sparks Avenue and Pleasant Street improvements to sidewalks, parking, and the bike path improvements along Sparks Avenue. Next slide, please. Oh, there it is. So sorry, it wasn't 780, Matt. It was 816 for the original proposal from the architects on the building improvements. So that has shifted a bit. The price, the funding sources are listed currently there. Next slide, please. And just listing out what we're up to, the timeline. So we basically scrapped what the architects had completed and presented and went to individual contracts for the various work programs that needed to take place. We're trying to get this obviously ready for occupation by summer. Next slide, please. That's just permits for the trailer. Next slide. Thank you. So what happens after this is 3 East Chestnut, people move out and we will do some renovations to that space for reuse. And same with Bathing Beach. When that gets vacated, we will work to repurpose that to the Jetty's tennis programming as time allows. Next slide, please. So that basically summarizes that. Any questions on it? Are we going to the end, Madam Chair?
I think run through all of your projects and then I'll see if there's any public questions.
Roger.
Can I comment on this one? Again, if I added up those numbers on a couple screens ago, it's about 1,700,000, 800, 400, and 250s. You know, I think we're close to 1,700,000. Did I get that right?
For
total for the
Pleasant Street,
816, and then 450 for the trailer and 250 for the Pleasant side. And is that
so, Matt? Those are actually just the funding sources. Those aren't actually what the contracts are being signed up for.
Right.
So, like for instance, the one you signed up tonight was the ultimate abatement, and that is that was. I'm sorry, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. What I can
20-something thousand.
That's right. So we can break down exactly what the contracts are for. Doing it individually like this has certainly allowed us to, I think, to control the costs a lot better.
Right. My point is I don't support this at all. I think, you know, I did early on, but now that when then I saw the building and saw the price, I changed my mind. This is money that could be much better spent, and it's for 10 years. We don't have a very good track history as a town of, you know, the Plus building was temporary. We don't have a good track record of doing what we say we're going to do. I think this will be here for 20 years. You know, once we've spent this money, I just think we got to get on with it and build the building we truly need out at Fairgrounds. And, you know, and if the voters pass this over, I will not be upset. We really do need to, you know, bite the bullet and make the big expenditure. This is wasteful in my opinion.
The good news.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what do we have budgeted for screening for that trailer?
There's nothing budgeted for screening, but I will say that we will certainly be able to work with our landscaper to install whatever is appropriate. We need the contractor to finish.
There's been some public outcry about the aesthetics, and I think we're going to need to do something to soften that with landscaping.
Sure.
And I'm not sure how I feel about doing any renovations to that East Chestnut building. But we'll continue to talk about that when we talk about facilities in general.
Okay. Moving on.
Keep running through.
I'm sorry?
Yes, please
Okay.
continue.
Thank you. So next, I think we have sidewalk improvements. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, sidewalk improvements, starting with Easy Street and Lower Broad. This is a project that is essentially the extension of the first part of Easy Street that ended on one side, on the, I think the south side of the Easy Street bulkhead. So it essentially involves just simply removing and replacing the existing curbing and picking up the bricks and putting them back down. We're replacing 2 crosswalks. We have further reconsidered the program down here specific to flush granite or brick crosswalk. And right now, I believe to minimize or forget about disrupting the truck route, we're going, right now, I believe we're going to be going with a painted crosswalk on Easy Street at the Dreamland to the bulkhead, as well as down at the end of Easy at Broad. Try to minimize impacts with everything else going on right now. We could always add them in later, but to move on would be really helpful. We are looking at 2 crosswalks on Lower Broad. Right now, only one of them is being proposed. That is, as you turn the corner onto Broad, there's a no parking section on the left-hand side next to the old Taco Taco, where a tremendous amount of people coming off the boats kind of crisscross across the pavement there. So we want to provide adequate space to do that. Basically, we're looking to get kicked off as soon as our contractor becomes available. We were waiting for the land bank park to kick off. They were kind of leading the way, and their schedule was essentially leading just before us picking up. It looks like the land bank's contractor is going to be, last I heard, they're going to be hiring our own contractor to do the work down there. And that stretch involves removing the broken precast concrete, similar to what we did on Washington Street, and replacing that with the HDC approved 4-inch historic looking granite with the split face and the thermal top with the eased edge. Other than that, this is largely a remove and replace, with the exception of the stretch in front of across from the Whaling Museum, along the juice bar and the sunken ship, something that was explored with the business owners and the neighborhood when we did the South Beach improvements after the sewer force main failure in 18. So we're looking to widen the sidewalk for handicap accessibility and accessibility in general for the extensive use of that sidewalk. That's going to go out to the existing yellow no parking line. So it's about an 8-inch or 12-inch widening. That'll help meet the ADA accessibility requirements on both corners. We did have, we've gotten input going as far back as 2018 on this project. But as I'd say, as most recently, working with various partners and I would say collaborators, we scheduled a meeting back during COVID or ongoing COVID back in December. We scheduled a meeting that was rescheduled to accommodate some people. And then we had representatives from the businesses in the area, select board members from the Historic Commission, HDC, we had some staff, and also Committee on Disabilities represented. So they've provided some input that largely has been factored in to the plan down here. Next slide, please. So expected cost essentially from the bulkhead down to the corner and then up to South Water Street is expected to cost about $1 million. The funding for that is the Article 1021 funding program is 1.03. Next slide. Okay, so shifting over to sidewalk improvements in a different section of town, Pleasant, Sparks, and Williams, very different program altogether. This is, I would say, in a very early conceptual stage. This project, along with Orange Street, has basically, I would say it's still ongoing, but it's kind of stalled with the transportation planners exit. So the planning director and myself have been continuing to keep this project alive and moving forward, but very slowly. We presented, I think, the original concept in front of the board, select board, to get initial feedback. And since then, we have begun the historical archaeological analysis over on Sparks Avenue, adjacent to Newtown Cemetery, and continue to work through some of the early issues raised during the concepts, including doing some early reach out to some of the individual homeowners that will play a pivotal role in some of these important improvements. Next slide, please. Just a highlight of some of the pieces of the project. So the project ultimately comes off of the intersection or roundabout design at Four Corners. Involves reuse or different use and realignment. What was formerly the school property, I believe, has now been swapped with the town. A better transition to the end of Williams Lane, including sidewalk access down Williams Lane. And next slide, please. This is just a highlight of some of the different concept ideas about the widening of the sidewalk through the Pleasant Street area, as well as carrying sidewalk down Williams and up the further stretch of Pleasant Street. So there's talk of potentially coming into the Phelan property that many of you probably know up on that upper stretch of Pleasant. And we've been in touch with the Phelan family and having lots of preliminary discussions about what that might look like. Next slide, please. So initial ongoing contract for the engineering is at 207. We're pulling from existing funding for Sparks Avenue. And this is under the Mass DOT's Complete Streets program, which we are part of. Next slide, please. So the first Easy Street and Lower Broad sidewalk improvements expected to be in place by this summer. And the other is going to be ongoing. We're still in a very early stage of design. I'm hearing that Plus has some promising candidates for transportation manager. So I'm looking forward to, hopefully that happening soon and being able to move forward with some of these other concept designs so we can stay on top of these improvements. Next slide. All right, Waite Drive. You heard from Tucker earlier tonight. We are quite proud to be a part of the Mass Works award, not just the initial round of, I think it was 2.5, but an additional 250,000 of grant funding for a total of 2.75. to build on the initial funding that the town had set aside. So that we can go down to, well, the summary here is just two-way vehicular traffic. It's probably easier to take a look at the next slide. And this is just an overview. The shaded areas are essentially what will be impacted between now and Christmas, which is essentially the schedule for phase one. With the vote tonight to approve the contract with CC Construction, the low bidder, low qualified, responsible bidder, we will be working with them to get a schedule together and get started. So the lower left-hand side include in phase one improvements along Old South and into the driveway of 2 Fairgrounds. That essentially is providing a connection between the bike path, sidewalk, up Old South around a proposed outbound NERDA bus stop, and then into the driveway of 2 Fairgrounds. There'll be sidewalks on both sides, the driveway throat to that facility and to the parking lot in the rear, and ultimately through Waite Drive all the way to either Tacoma and or Amelia will be more easily accessible. We will be bringing water and sewer in from Old South into the property and updating those services to the building. And to the rear, we're looking at a newly expanded, if you haven't been back there, DPW spent a fair amount of time last fall expanding the parking at 2 Fairgrounds. So the contractor will be sharing will have their own specific area for construction laydown, and the remainder will be public parking. The configuration is going to be a little different. We've worked with the police station and the NERDA bus people to reconfigure the layout so that the contractor will have sort of exclusive areas that will be safer, and the public will be able to park and make use of the shuttle service as proposed through the 4 Fairgrounds parking lot is the current proposal. Sorry, the Waite Drive project is essentially from Tacoma coming down to where the parking lot is now, turning 90 degrees and coming down to Amelia Drive. So that will be a through 2-way vehicular traffic. Parking, on-street parking, which is head-in on-street parking, will be against the back of the, basically along the back of the fence for the combined police and fire station. And you can see the large block buildings down at 6 Fairgrounds. Next slide, please. So the current opinion of probable construction costs for this entire project, both phases included, is at just over $3 million. Phase 1 is what I just highlighted, and that's what has been awarded. The estimate for that was 1.94. Our low responsive and responsible bidder, CC Construction, is at 2.34, and that was what the board approved tonight. So next slide, please. We'll be negotiating the mobilization and ultimately approving the schedule moving forward. Construction is expected to begin immediately, begin and is going to be focused initially to get the section of Old South Road completed and the driveway throat into 2 Fairgrounds, to get that done before summer, so that the grand majority of the project, which is the section of from Tacoma into the parking lot and then out to Amelia, that could be worked on through the summer and largely out of the way. Next slide, please. Okay. I think that's it for Waite Drive. Next up, Washington Francis. All right. This is based on the concept the board approved last fall. We've entered into final engineering, and we have we did some outreach with the other utilities to determine that ultimately Wannacomet Water is in need of replacing water main from Commercial Street down to the end of Washington Street Extension. Some minor changes to the water configuration, including a hydrant move, was originally contemplated at the Washington Francis intersection. So that will be part of this. We're looking to combine the projects together with a final design is underway to be finished up this summer and out to bid this summer so that we could begin construction this coming fall. Right now, we're taking a look at the profile of Washington Street to address the new Select Board Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee policy. This is just a rehash of the board's approved concept from the fall. And next slide, please. Summary of contracts that are currently associated. There'll be a combined effort of funding from Wannacomet as well as likely the Chapter 90 funding. Next slide. And just the timeline. Expected to be the entire project completed by summer of 22. Next slide, please. All right.
Before we move on to the next speaker, Rick Atherton has had his hand up. I'd like to recognize him.
Thank you, Dawn. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm not sure this is the right time, but I did have two observations on the prior presentation, and so if it's appropriate, I'd like to make them now.
Do you mean the police and harbor master presentation?
Well, two of the presentations on the projects. One is the harbor building on Washington Street, and the other is the building hanging out around Sparks Avenue and the old fire station.
I would go ahead and make the comments now before I move on to water and sewer.
Great. Thank you, Dawn. First of all, in terms of the building near the old fire station, I cannot be alone in driving by and thinking that that's the ugliest building on Nantucket. And why we're proceeding with making that up to a 10-year project is just frankly beyond me. I did read the I&M article about the HDC's comments, and I am familiar with prior town administration approaches to their relationship with the HDC or the CONCOM or other regulatory agencies. And I think there is a tendency to sort of try and overwhelm them. So I think that's not a good choice by this board. And I encourage each member of the board to think about the long-term impact of all our citizens driving by that facility. It's just not appropriate for Nantucket. Number two, the harbor master building, I've said this before and I'll say it again, is being built on the beach. And I think your own environmental objectives as a select board indicate we ought to be cognizant of sea level rise and the impact on our infrastructure. It's hard for me to believe that building a building of that size comports with that goal. It could be disassembled if they want to have a boat ramp out there to have rescue boats. That's great. They also talked during their presentation of the Concom about being able to view the harbor from the second or third floor on the building. But all you have to do is draw a line. You can't see the west side of the harbor at all. If that's what they wish, they ought to have a viewing station out near the fuel ramp on the docks. Thank you very much for taking the comment on.
Thanks for your comments, Rick. Next, we have Hillary Rayport has her hand up.
Hi, Dawn, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I know there are lots of projects that are being presented, and we are going to make some statements. I was just a little concerned about getting kind of far away from some of the projects that we wanted to speak about. And regarding the downtown sidewalks, I just really hope that we can find a way to incorporate some design review, both with the larger public by way of information sessions, and also design review by the Historical Commission or the HDC for changes to materials and shapes with these downtown sidewalks, because I have been looking at the same plan that is ever unchanging. For the past 2 years, that plan has been presented unchanged since it was created in 2017. And we are continuing to offer feedback about the shapes, changes to the shape, and just would really like to see some way, if it's a review with the HDC or with us, to actually see our feedback incorporated. That's what I wanted to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Billy Cassidy.
Hi, Don. Thanks for recognizing me. Through you, I would just like to assure Rick that he is not the only person that feels the way he does about the fire department property. It offends me to the core, and I feel it makes a mockery of the HDC process and what a lot of other people work really hard to try to strive towards. I fundamentally understand nothing about that. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. We are definitely hearing all of your comments. Alan Reinhardt.
Unmute.
Go ahead, Alan.
Great. Thank you, Dawn, for taking my comments. As you know, I've spent a lot of time looking at the downtown sidewalks. The Roads and Right-of-Way Committee delivered a very lengthy report, street number by street number and so on. I've been down there now several times with Rob, and actually I think the last time Hillary was there as well. And we were looking at the improvements to Easy Street and Broad Street. These are long-awaited improvements that are very much necessary. Just think of the foot traffic that's coming off the boats from both the High Line and from the Steamship Authority, making their way to the bike shops on Broad Street and so on. I think that this project has been a long time in the planning, and I'm really excited to see that it looks imminent. And I would hope that the board would eagerly support this, because it really is in the heart of downtown, and particularly with what the land bank is doing to that parcel on Easy Street. That's going to be a beautiful little park down there. So I think it's very important that this project move forward with all deliberate speed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Angus McLeod. And then I'm going to move on to the next speaker.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Angus. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Madam Chair, for hearing this. I just want to read a letter from our the Nantucket Historical Commission to the Select Board. And this is really about protecting the rural and history character of Nantucket. We're writing to advise you of our concerns regarding public works projects that affect historic streets and the rural character of Nantucket's roads. Unfortunately, the project managers are not adequately considering how projects adversely impact our island's historic character. New roadways and sidewalks designs can and should be executed in ways that achieve accessibility and transportation goals while preserving historic artifacts and Nantucket's distinctive look. Sometimes this is as simple as including a grass strip at the edge of a road or selecting a more rural or less suburban curb treatment. In the case of preserving historic street artifacts, planners must identify this material in advance and specify for it to remain in place. What is not accounted for and documented cannot be retained. At this point, it pains us to report that the advice we are offering is falling on deaf ears. The plans you're seeing today for Mid-Island and downtown sidewalks have not been responsive to our feedback, which we have offered repeatedly over the course of more than a year. It was nearly 2 years ago that the public and this board demanded closer attention and guidelines for the work on historic sidewalks. In response, the Select Board asked for a policy, and the town manager appointed a sidewalk committee to advise her and DPW Director Rob McNeil. Director McNeil has not convened this committee since May of 2019. He made his last report in June of 2019 when Town Preservation Planner Holly Backus and Preservation Trust Director Michael May stated, "This work is a start, but there's a long way to go." Our commission has prepared specific, well-researched advice on both preservation policy and preservation engineering and presented this to Director McNeil in public meetings six months ago. Our illustrated document advising on maintenance and preservation of historic pavement is published on our town website. We've repeatedly asked for this board to hold a public deliberation on the topic and develop a policy everyone can live with. We'd like you to follow through on your promises. Please consult with your historical commission to keep Nantucket distinctive and historic. Thank you for your consideration. And Madam Chair, I'd like to thank Libby for her earlier comments and look forward to meeting soon to discuss policy.
Yes,
thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Angus. I was in receipt of your letter and thought it important that that you be aware that it is coming forward. And I do believe on the particular project that's happening in town that there was a walk around done with Robert McNeil and members of the Historical Commission as well as other stakeholders, and that there is an effort being made to follow the guidelines when and where appropriate. But we will convene on that further. And in the interest of time, I would like to move on to the next set of projects, if that's okay with everyone.
I'll make a comment, Don. I just real quick. I think we've got a committee and they should meet and we should get the feedback. It's not enough to walk around and talk. There needs to, I think that there needs to be a policy that we asked for, and we need to have, we don't want to make the mistakes that we made, at the bottom of Main Street, elsewhere. I don't want to support that. So, I feel very strongly that the report that the Historical Commission did was great. They're not saying that we can't widen it, but they're saying there's ways to do it sensitively. And I think that we should be, following those. I think we should be embracing preservation more than we seem to be doing. And so I think, I hope that we do that. Thank you.
Libby, do you want to introduce the next speaker? We'll be reconvening on that as an agenda item, probably sometime next month.
We have a water company project next, and Mark Willett, the water company director, will take us through.
Thank you, Libby. Our project is that Washington Street main extension that the DPW director, Rob McNeil, covered pretty well. When we found out that they were going to be working in that intersection, we moved the Washington Street main replacement job up. That was much further out, maybe 5 or 6 years out in our capital plan, but knowing that setting up the truck route and the traffic delays and everything that was going to go on with that Francis Street, Washington Street intersection, we thought it'd be a good time to jump in and join up with him. We've been working hand in hand with that. We've calculated probably about, it's going to be right around $1 million for the water portion of it. We are going to use, Wannacomit's going to use our retained earnings to take care of that cost. No borrowing any money, Matt. And that's pretty much it. He summed it up. We're going to follow and go when he goes, so it's all done at one time, and we can kind of finish that whole stretch. It was in our capital plan, so it's just getting moved up a few years. And as far as the current project, North Liberty Street, the last connection was made today on the North Liberty Street project. All water pipe and sewer pipe have been backfilled. Roads are backfilled. And I think Victor's crew and everybody's going to start pulverizing and maybe even tomorrow or Friday and working towards getting that all paved curb to curb the whole length.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions for Mark? I think next up is David Gray for sewer, which we've already heard a little about tonight.
And thank you, Dawn. Thank you, everybody. I also have Andrew Patno on the line with me for this Surfside Road area project. He is the with Weston and Sampson, and he is the engineer who was boots on the ground the entire time during the Nantucket Harbor Shimmer project. So at times I will have Drew jump in on this as we go along. This project has come out of a couple of different things that we did with the Nantucket Harbor Shimmer project, and it has come out of the 2020 sewer master plan. This is bringing a new sewer line from Vesper Lane, connecting into the new line that we had put in during the Schimmel project, and going all the way down to Mycomet Ave. This project is also going to include a brand new pump station on a parcel of property that was approved on the Miles Reese side. Very rigorous schedule, and there has been some very recent changes as early as recently as Monday. So that will take and be discussed a little further on down the line. RBO out of the Cape was awarded the construction for this project. They were the contractors that did the Nantucket Harbor Schimmel project and actually the C Street pump station upgrade project. The 2014 and 2004 CWMP also stated for the needs areas that this project in conjunction with the Nantucket Harbor Shimmer project is figured in for the capacity of both of all of those new needs areas, not new needs areas, but the needs areas and future capacity going forward as well. Next slide, please. This kind of gives you an overview of the entire route from Vesper Lane all the way to Mycomet Ave. The construction is going to take place in the northbound lane, the inbound lane from Bartlett Road into town. And we are also going to be leaving a corridor in this same area for the proposed third sewer force main as we go forward. The map on the right, the plan on the right shows the proposed pump station, drainage and everything that we've got designed by Weston and Sampson as we've gone forward here. Next slide, please. This is just a quick view of showing the pump station, 3 different sides. It's similar to the pump station that's across the street over on the Dias property. It's going to have easy access to the wet well for cleaning and maintenance. There's going to be modern type odor control measures in place. Modern looking building with a triplex pump station inside. There's going to be 3 different pumps in there designed for future capacity as well, which will take a burden off of some areas of the island here. Next page, please. This is some of the appropriation stuff. I can have Drew kind of jump in on some of this stuff. He's been very close to this project. He is also one that's been in the design part of it. So I'd like to ask Drew to jump in on this.
David, I don't think Drew is on.
I know he was earlier because he had texted me, unless he lost his connection. Okay, I'll run through unless Drew pops back in, but I know he was. The total appropriation for this project is $7.6 million, which includes the construction and design phases. We were approved through the state funding state revolving fund project for a 0% interest rate loan, which we are moving forward with. In ATM 18, Article 12, we received $5.6 million, and in ATM 20, Article 16, we received $2 million. Again, with construction costs skyrocketing, as everyone's talking about, we feel that this will get us through to exactly where we need to be. Next slide, please. So this is our timeline. Notice to proceed was issued to RBO in February 11th of 21. Contract time is 420 days. Actual construction is scheduled to start April 5th. When this original project started, we had numerous delays with National Mass Historic Commission, Mass DEP. We got delayed. We've had a few different extensions on our SRF loan already to date. We had a pre-construction conference on Monday on site. We met up in the parking lot up at the Muse. Most all departments were represented on site, as was the school. And it was a very good meeting to discuss a lot of the issues. We were there at 1:30, 2 o'clock, which was planned specifically so that we could see the traffic in the area trying to come out of Boynton Lane and on Surfside Road itself. So it was able to give us a bird's eye view of what was going on. At this point in time, this project has been moved to almost all construction will be held at night, as we heard recently in the approval for the noise waiver. The only construction that will take place during the day will be paving on Fridays. And that's because the asphalt plant will not be open at night. So we'll have our paving done on Fridays, as similar to what we did on Vesper Lane, et cetera. We can move forward. Again, permitting and HDC, we've talked with them. RBO is in the process of securing some of the local building and trench opening permits, which we've received road opening and closing permits already. Next slide. This just goes over the contracts so far. The next slide. One of the biggest parts of this for the resiliency is we are replacing a 30-year-old pump station that is, it's definitely showing signs of its age, with a brand new, more energy efficient pump station. And a lot of these newer changes on pump stations with energy efficiency, we will be working with National Grid to work on the rebates and incentive programs on all the new stuff. We did a fabulous job with C Street and a lot of stuff here. So Next slide. Be a new standby generator, modern. The one that's in there was installed in 1986, and it shows, but it runs like a top, but it's definitely there. It doesn't meet any of the new tier qualifications for EPA standards. It's going to give us some flexibility as far as resiliency to take and allow us to be able to pump into both force mains that are there, the existing 20-inch from C Street and the new force main that will be coming from C Street as well. So it's going to give us reliability and flexibility to be able to use two different force mains if we need to shut one down for cleaning or whatever. Next slide. So this kind of just is the overlook. We're trying to get this all done and paved before summer season 21. One of our biggest things, and we may have dropped the ball a little bit on this one, we're going to have its own project's website. There'll be schedules coming up all the time. There'll be notifications on the town website, and traffic management plans will be included. So that's the Surfside Road area improvement. Next slide. I guess we're going to hold questions, I think, till the end, I believe. Okay. This is the big project. This is the third sewer force main from.
Excuse me, David. It's
Yes.
Not to totally interrupt you, but the board has had an update already of the third sewer force main. So I don't know that you need to go through it in the level of detail as the others. Maybe just a quick summary of where we are with the design.
Okay, can do that. Yep. We are at just a little over 60% on the design documents. We have just received an email the other day from Ziad to take and go over the plans and discussions with EPG and Hazen and Sawyer. This force main has come out of the 2018 sewer force main failure that we had. This is the map that shows the approved map route that was approved by the select board at a previous meeting. A lot of thought went into this alignment because most of the streets that we are going down, sewer is already planning to be replaced, as is water. So and storm drains. So all infrastructure will be replaced as we come down these routes. That was the biggest reason why we chose these routes. We have been working very closely with Holly since this project started, even before design started. We just submitted the 60% plans to NHC for their review and comments. Being a local guy that grew up here, it's, that the historic characteristics are very important. As are the infrastructure characteristics, very important to me. So we can move forward on the slide. Said design phase, we're hoping to go out to bid in the spring. And it's going to be 3 to 4 year project. But we're still in the initial planning phases, but hope to have a bid out by the spring. Next slide. This goes through some of the reasons why we need it. Next slide, please. Again, this is some more reasons why we went to going forward with this. Next slide. Town administration, sewer department representatives, Hazen and Sawyer, environmental partners. It'll go out to bid this fall, this summer. We'll go from there, and we're currently coordinating public outreach programs. Again, this will have its own website like the Shimo project did. And again, you'll have 3-week look-aheads and weekly look-aheads and everything else. This is going to be a rough project in town because the roads are so small, but I believe we'll be able to get through town without too much difficulty. Next slide. Again, this is for the outreach, which is coming. Websites will be we'll be meeting with neighborhood associations like we did with Shimo. We have a sewer project email specific for that. Next slide. This is some of the known issues that we've come across and we've been working on with the different organizations and groups. Next slide. One thing that we will have is we will have representatives on location. I believe it's going to be by PAL, similar to what we did for the Shimo project to overwatch the site for any archaeological finds or discoveries along the route. All construction is within already traveled roadways and already constructed roadways or sidewalks. So we're not anticipating finding anything, but you just never know. Next slide. This just goes over the alternative assessment, what we had done. Gives you the 3.5. This is more stuff, the basis of design report, construction documents. That's pretty much comes across the end of the sewer force main project. It's a very important project. So we'll go forward with that. This project here is the South Shore Road sewer project. This is to design and install a gravity sewer on the full length of South Shore Road. What this will do, also add some resiliency as well. It will take and allow us to eliminate at least 2 pump stations along this route, the Sherburne Commons pump station and potentially the Satcham's Path pump station, adding resiliency so you don't have to have multiple pump stations pumping all one direction and pumping back the other way. So this has to do with the 2020 sewer master plan and the CWMP for the needs area. Also potential for future growth, possibly on South Shore Road with a pending subdivision project. Next slide, please. Timeline, we're hoping to take and get this bid out as well in this summer for possible construction to start in the fall of 21. It's planning on being construction to be in conjunction with the sewer force main coming from C Street, as it's also going down South Shore Road at the same time. Again, also all sewer water, stormwater will be looked at and replaced as we come down the roads. This new sewer will be run dry until the future pump station at the treatment plant here is constructed, which we're seeking funding at this town meeting coming up. Next slide. And this goes into the funding, where we're getting the funding. And we're getting ready to start design once we move forward here with funding issues and contracts. Next slide. Again, this is just a timeline. We're trying to get everything done in conjunction with the other project. So we're only going to take and dig the road up once, and we're only going to pave the road once. It'll be curb to curb, or in the case of South Shore Road, side to side. There is no curbs. It'll be painted. All the drainage will be replaced. Anywhere water needs to be replaced or added to, we're working very closely with Mark. We're just now getting into a lot of the drainage with Rob. So that's all we're all working together on that. Next. We're going to have a MISA review for endangered species, and local trench permits, about the biggest permit we're going to need on this once we get DEP full design. Pending contracts goes into saying with who and what for. Future contracts will be construction, engineering, etc. going forward. Next slide. Okay, this goes into some of the resiliency stuff I already spoke of. Next slide. And again, this will be multiple public outreach programs, 3-week look-aheads, notifications will be on the town website. We will have a project-specific website as well. And traffic management plans will be heavily involved with all the projects. And next slide. And this is the CMON program, which I can just basically touch on, but I don't have to go over too much of the slides. But we have been working on this now for 3 years. We did year 1 of a lot of the CMON construction this year. A lot of people got to witness and go up and experience the lining process, which it was an incredible project, which I still can't say enough. There was some incredible cost savings to us with this lining. I had never seen it done. It was never done on the island, and I think it was a real huge success. Going forward, it's all got to do with our Nantucket's best practices on how we operate the collection system. I just received the third update on the CMAR manual, which is a living document for the last 3 years. This will be year 3 that we are submitting it to EPA and DEP. We have reached out already to EPA, and we're trying to get the consent order that brought this whole CMAR program along. We're trying to get that consent order rescinded because we have gone above and beyond and met every milestone that we were required to meet, and then some. And it's under review right now by EPA. Next slide. Again, that talks about the consent order, where we are. CCTV and video inspection. Again, a lot of people here have been able to jump in the truck when it's been here. I know Libby has for certain. It's pretty eye-opening when you get to see what's under the ground. Next, please. Again, the status is ongoing. This continues along. We will be going into construction and replacement repairs for year 2 design this fall coming up. Again, there will be a lot more lining projects coming up and a lot more manhole lining, which is really, we're really seeing a difference in the II from the downtown area that we've worked on already. Next. Again, there's the timeline going forward, why we're doing what we're doing. Next. This is the cured in place lining that I was talking about. A lot of everybody got the chance to see it. I know multiple select persons were down on Easton Street and got to see it firsthand. Amazing technology, really. It saved an awful lot of digging. Next. Again, this is a living project. Hazen and Sawyer is designing the next year's construction projects already. Again, notifications will be on the town website. We'll have a lot of public outreach. Very surprising on this because of the chemical odor that comes out of the cured in place lining. If we had 5 calls, I think that was a lot. It was very well received. Again, project website will be going on forward. And again, traffic management plans will be included very heavily in this project as well. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you, David. I do have 2 hands raised. Thomas Barada.
Yes, I have a question for Dave. Madam Chair, I have a question for David through you.
Go ahead, please.
The Atlantic Avenue, is that sewer line on Atlantic Avenue part of the Surfside Road project? And the reason I ask is when the water main was replaced, the water company just patched the roads under the assumption that that sewer main was going to be replaced. And I believe there was discussion of it before. And I just wanted to see if that's actually going to be getting done soon.
Yes, thank you, Tom. The Atlantic Ave stretch is going to be part of the third force main that comes through there. That is the route. And that was another reason why that route was chosen for the third force main coming from C Street, as is the Five Corners intersection, et cetera. So that is coming with that next project, yes. We're going to be leaving a stub at Vesper Lane for that sewer work, but funding to do what we were doing, we left that for the force main project. And that will be repaved sidewalk, curb to curb, fully lit, and drainage will be addressed, as will water if it's needed in that area.
Madam Chair, question to the DPW director.
Yes.
Is the DPW planning to do any repairs along Atlantic Avenue? Because that road is extremely in bad shape since it was patch job for that water main that was done. And that was 2 or 3 years ago, and it really hasn't been touched since.
Rob?
Sure. Thanks, Thomas. Right now, it's maintenance issue. We're just dealing with potholes, spring potholes. That road is not planned to be touched until the four-way, I should say, Four Corners roundabout is completed, and it will be part of that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hillary Rayport.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment on the third sewer force main project. First of all, to David Gray, I very much appreciate on behalf of the Historical Commission your comments about the importance of understanding what historic resources might be affected by the project and working with Holly, and also working directly with our commission to identify them and mitigate any adverse effects. Because I do hope that the whole board understands that it's not just a sewer project, it's also a sidewalk reconstruction project, which is terrific. We need to fix our sidewalks. We need them to be flat and in good shape, but we also need them to retain the historic materials that's so distinctive and part of our National Historic Landmark. And I can guarantee you that if we do not work, and we have plenty of time to do this, but if we do not work with the engineer from this point forward, it's a 60% plan, so we have plenty of time. But if we don't work with that engineer to identify the material and figure out how to keep it in the street and reuse it, it will disappear, and our distinctive streetscapes will look a lot like all the other towns on the Northeast, that have lost this material. So yeah, I thank you for that appreciation, and I hope this can be a model project. And I also just am recognizing that I opened a meeting, so I don't know if any of the other commissioners wanted to say anything. Perhaps we could offer them that chance, and then we could close our public meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission.
Can I just comment once, just quickly, Don?
Yes, go ahead,
I want
David.
to thank Hillary. I know we are working right now with scheduling to have a meeting with your group in the very near future. Our engineers are both on board with this, and we look forward to sitting down with your group here very shortly.
Thanks, David, for that. Georgia Raisman, and then maybe Georgia, you could make a motion to adjourn the Historical Commission meeting.
Thank you, Dawn, for recognizing me. I would like to thank the board, the select board, for reestablishing the Nantucket Historical Commission 2 years ago, and for recognizing the importance of our work in connection with sidewalks in town and sidewalks further out of town, because as Hillary said, it all goes to the historic fabric that makes us not another New England town, not another suburban town, and that makes us the place that people come to and want to see when they get off the ferry. There's a reason that they spend all that money coming over on the ferry, and they don't want to see the town that they left at home. So I really appreciate the fact that you all support that and understand that, and I'm looking forward to our working with David and with other engineers responsible for preserving the unique environment that we actually have out here. Thanks again. And I guess I will call this meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission to an end. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. Appreciate it. Next up, we have natural resources.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm just here tonight to talk about the Nantucket and Nantucket Harbors Action Plan update. I'll try to go as quickly as I can because I know we're getting late. The harbor plan really is just a plan that the town that is state approved, and it really provides guidance to the people that do Chapter 91 reviews for what public benefits and public uses we're looking for, as well as providing a kind of a great and comprehensive look at how we're planning to use all sections of the harbor, but primarily related to public access and environmental health and those things. Eric, if you want to keep going on the slides, that'd be great. So was approved originally in 2009. It's a 10-year plan. We've petitioned the state for extensions for the last couple of years. We had planned to already be underway with the update. We got delayed due to COVID. This plan requires kind of a committee level commitment to update and do. And then as we delayed for COVID, we decided that as the big component of our update is probably going to be related to how the harbor area is going to adapt to sea level rise and climate change is kind of the big adds, to wait until that coastal resiliency plan was kind of fleshed out a little bit more and either completed or well underway, as that's going to be a really huge help for planning for this to make sure everything links up and is comprehensive. So we're going to be putting in for funding again in the upcoming budget cycle for the next fiscal year. we may be able to reconvene the committee earlier to kind of identify those objectives and get started. But I think having the coastal resiliency plan in hand is going to be really critical to have a plan that's going to be in place for the next 10 years. So I think that was a good decision at the time, and we're in a good place for the update starting sometime next year. And I'll leave it for questions at that.
Does anyone have any questions for Jeff?
I have
Matt?
a comment. I watched you today, Jeff, on the Civic League on the Chapter 91. And
Yes,
I
sir.
thought that you did a good job, and that was very interesting, so learn some good things. I think that it was one of the things that was interesting is we have an intact harbor plan. They do really want to try to follow it. And in over on the vineyard in Edgartown, they're asking for a 20-foot wide sidewalk, walking path along the harbor. And their, DEP is helping them get that because it's in their plan. So I think it's important for us, to get, when we do ours, to think about those things. And it was just a very, I was going to talk about this under select board comment, but it was just a very good meeting today. And I think there's some positive that's going to come out of it. And I thank you, Jeff, for what you did.
No problem. Thank you, Matt. And definitely, I know they recorded it through the Civic League, so I'm sure that's available. And, Steve McKenna has been a great resource for us and is really looking forward to getting into our update process and helping us from the CZM end.
That's really good to hear. I haven't had a chance to see that yet, but I want to watch the recording. Georgia Reisman, did you have your hand up from before, or were you wanting to speak on this item? Georgia? I think her hand was up from before. Okay. Thanks, everyone. It's really great to get an update on all of these things, and was really thorough. I appreciate it. Next up, we have a couple of select boards reports and comments. We have a ratification of a decision from the HDC appeal. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to look it over. I would say that the three of you who voted in the affirmative should take the lead on a motion. Jason?
Yeah, unless Melissa and Christy have any comments, I'm happy to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. I know John's here for this if anybody did have any technical questions, but I'll just go ahead with the motion. By roll call, Melissa Murphy.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Matt Fay.
No.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
I'm going to vote in the affirmative because I'm happy with the decision. It was reflective of what happened. Is that appropriate? Okay. That motion carries 4-1.
And I almost did the same thing, Don. I was fine with what was written, but
Yeah, I wasn't sure which way, but I think that's fine.
I vote no a lot. But I vote by myself.
Change your vote, Matt?
I'll just keep it open. Yeah, keep my go.
We're still 4-1 then? Okay. Committee reports. Christy?
It's not really a committee report, but I just wanted to thank all the department heads for speaking tonight. It was really helpful to get all of those updates. There's been a lot of projects going on, and it was really nice to have them all at once. And it's really good to see all the departments working together, so we're not opening the streets multiple times. So just wanted to put that out there and thank them for taking the time tonight.
Absolutely. It was great. Jason?
Yeah, that just made me think of something, Christy, as I was listening to everyone. We have such a short window to get these projects done, and it's gonna happen again this spring, right? You're gonna turn down a road, have a detour. You're gonna turn down another road and have another detour. But we only got about 3 months to get it done, And I think each year we get better and better at getting out as much information ahead of time as possible. It gets to a point where you can't, even if people know, you kind of get stuck in traffic. You got to reroute a lot, but I think we do a good job of getting the word out. So, but it's going to happen again for the next 3 months, but we have to do it.
Matt?
Yeah, just an update. The Coastal Resiliency met. We had a Julia Nissel or Kissel, KN, CZM. She spoke and gave us an update on the NOAA tides, the projections in the rule in the what's going to happen. They're projecting 7.8 feet potentially by 2100. It's going to be on resilient mass. You'll be able to go on and see the different numbers. So the recommendation from the Coastal Resiliency is, was in that range. So we're on the right path. It might be updated when we do when the plan is done, but we'll see. They also was an update. Envision Nantucket gave an update, and there was a survey that Remain and Acclimate did, and it was, sort of as you expect. People want the government to deal with the coastal resiliency issue, but they don't want to pay for it. So they want stuff to happen, but they don't want to pay. They hope someone else will pay. So it was, kind of how you'd expect. That was number one. And the other one, the earlier question about carrying capacity, I can't let that go. Carrying capacity is a topic. There are the people that are talking about it on island believe that it's, that our water or something will be a magic bullet and stop growth. It doesn't work. It won't work like that. We looked at this in the 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. We have tons of water as long as we don't pollute it. The harbor's great as long as we don't pollute it. We'll be fine. But it is a topic of sustainable development. It is a topic in planning. It isn't something that's old. It's actually something relatively new now that it's people like tourist areas like Venice is really dealing with it. National parks, Milford Sound in New Zealand, they look and they limit the number of visitors to those places so they aren't overrun and ruined. And we did it in our last harbor plan. We specifically deterred large cruise ships, and we did that because we didn't want to become, some of them were wanting to come to the island at that time, and we specifically said, hey, we don't want them to dump 5,000, 10,000 people on Nantucket at that time of day. So it actually is something to think about. And I went on, I just quickly went on to, the plan, national planning, and, just put in carrying capacity. The first one was APA Learn and its topics about it. The second one, was there's a tourist in town, guidance for local planners. Successful tourism accomplishes at least three things. First, it generates positive experiences for visitors, ones that are unique and fulfill or surpass trip expectations. Second, it provides economic and social benefits to the host community. That's us. Third, it is sustainable. The carrying capacity of the destination is not breached, and it does not consume its commons. And so, so I just want to clarify that it is important. It is something we should be thinking about in our planning and in our, governing the island. And it is, but it isn't the magic bullet that a lot of the people who are calling for it think it is. It's really at different levels that we have to do it. There's no magic bullet that will save us. We have to, make a real concerted effort to dig down and think of those things. So.
Thank you, Matt. I think it's an important topic. It keeps coming up, and I did have a meeting recently with the chair of the planning board and the planning commission, and Libby and Andrew, to kind of discuss what people mean by the concept and in what ways it's appropriate to talk about it, because it can mean so many different things. So I think that the focus tonight was very specifically on build out analysis, because that's something that they have more clear parameters to define. But I appreciate what you just said. I almost forgot to mention that the Nantucket Historical Commission was awarded a grant to create the survey plan and update the island-wide survey for the historic resources. It was one of the larger grants awarded recently, and it's been a core goal of the Historical Commission to help move that forward. So it's just really exciting that that's moving along. And thank you, Holly, and thank you, Hillary, who's still on. And that's all I have for committee reports for tonight. If there's nothing else, can we do a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call: Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. And see you all. Not next week, but soon.